So where's Artie? Where's Artie? Three. We're going to call to order the July 31st meeting of the Inglewood City Council. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Put your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we start, we have three presentations to make. The first presentation is in recognition of the Inglewood Budget Team. They are the recipients of the prestigious Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. This award, which has not been bestowed upon the city since 2002, represents a significant achievement for the completion of the fiscal year 2011 and 2012 budget. It reflects the commitment of the governing body and staff to meeting the highest principles of governmental budgeting. Please join me in congratulating the City of Inglewood Budget Team, led by Artie Field, City Manager. And could we all stand over there underneath the insignia? Sharon Koki, Jose Cortez, Kiana Buchanan, Yolanda Douglas, and Daryl Brown. Good big round of applause. Okay, will the graduates of the CERT training program please stand, those that are present here in the audience? The City of Inglewood Office of Emergency Services and Disaster Planning and the Los Angeles County Fire Department is pleased to recognize residents who have completed the Community Emergency Response Team CERT training program. These residents have committed to 3 consecutive Saturdays for a total of 24 hours of intense class lecture, field exercise, and teamwork, and are now certified as CERT graduates and members of the city's Community Emergency Response Team. Please join me again in congratulating our graduates. And could we line up over here? Okay, and finally, could Martin Sissick Jr. Duncan come forward? Right there. Congratulations on your many accomplishments as a Tiger Cub, Cub Scout, Weebo, Boy Scout, Venture Scout, and an Eagle Scout. Your continued support to our community, such as feeding the homeless, assisting many other Eagle Scout candidates, and for your untiring support to the senior citizens during the holidays have not gone unnoticed. You are saluted for your volunteer support as a camp counselor at Orville Wright Middle School, Paso del Rey Elementary School, and for assisting the Red Cross program at your high school, St. Bernard. I wish you much success as you travel through life's journey to strive towards excellence and making a difference in our world today. May God bless you in your future endeavor. From Yvonne Horton, Inglewood City Clerk. And a special commendation from the City of Inglewood to Eagle Scout Martin Joseph Sissick Jr. Duncan. The City of Inglewood is proud to recognize Martin Joseph Sissick Jr. Duncan for earning the rank of Eagle Scout, the highest rank attainable in the scouting program of the Boy Scouts of America. Your high standards of excellence, scout spirit, and leadership skills have not gone unnoticed. Thank you for being a role model for others to emulate. Now, therefore, be it known that the mayor and council members of the City of Inglewood, California, do hereby congratulate Eagle Scout Martin Joseph Sissick Jr. Duncan for his outstanding accomplishment. May you have continued success in all future endeavors. Presented this third day, well, it's not August, actually, July 31st, 2012. This is his mother, Tracy. Oh, come on. Don't worry about that. Thank you. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, and before we have public comment, the City of Inglewood's new waste and recycle hauler will begin service on tomorrow, August 1st, 2012. And outside in the hallway, there's a schedule, or a list of their new cart rollout program. So anyone that wants a copy, there's one outside in the hallway. Any persons wishing to address City Council on any item on today's agenda other than closed session and the public hearings may do so at this time.
My first time at a council meeting, so please bear with me. I received a notice of intent to place a lien, I guess, on my property at 10111 Hawthorne Boulevard. And
Sir, that's the public hearing, so that'll come a little later. Okay? No problem.
Hi, how you doing, everybody? I'm Chaplain Second Lieutenant Tweedle. I'm here to announce that we're having a boat festival, Born of Woman Festival.
Sir, it has to be something on the agenda right now.
Oh, okay,
An
yes,
announcement
sir.
like that would be later at the end of the meeting.
Okay, yes, sir.
No problem. Please come forward. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Diane Zambrano. With regards to item number 5, I'm always concerned that we still don't have anything about the anti-McMansioning of our community. We have several projects that are half up, half down, have been that way for a while, that are multi-story insults to the rest of the community. And I would hope that you start making sure that we don't go crazy on McMansioning. Every other community resents it, despises it, and yet somehow we have let that go without putting a block on that. A lot of our community moved to this community for single-family residences, and I know that at least the South Lock Haven area is R3, but that doesn't mean that we want to put 30 people in the lot next door to a family who's been there for a long period of time. I know that's why, with nobody living across the street from me, there are 26 cars parked in front of the school that have not a single residence from my community attached to those vehicles. So that kind of addresses that housing caper that you did last week or 2 weeks ago. Additionally, I'm glad that you're bringing back the, gosh, what is an anchor? And I would hope that in the future, before you pass ordinances, you actually make sure that the definitions are on them when they come to you the first time. This is one of those, gosh, wouldn't Paul Russell have had a great time? Sailor, an anchor, golly gee whiz, wow. You didn't know what you were passing when you passed it, and now you had to come back and redo it again. Let's hope you don't make that mistake. I look forward to a full complete on the financial statements. I think this community deserves it, and I think we're going to be in for an adventure. And I hope that we don't go with the silliness of some of the other communities that are suggesting they want to tax soda pop and want to tax everything else because someone failed to watch the finances early on.
Yes, my name is Alfonso Parker. On page 5 of the agenda for today, or tonight, C1 dash, I'm sorry, that's CI-1. It says under the mayor, Senate Bill 1185, price to establish a centralized...
Sir, that was last week, I believe.
You know, it sure is.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Good afternoon. Roy Fisher, the First District. With regard to item 5, you know, I have some friends who live next door to that property, and they were wondering why they hadn't had an environmental impact statement with regard to putting up those or adjoining those 2 lots, and then adding 6-car garages, you know, and then having a 2-story building that's going to be looking down on all of them. So with regard to those people and people in the area, seems to me that you then maybe need to look at that. I know that when it came to Crenshaw on the 80th, there was a bunch of controversy about it, and it was held. Now you're just going to just let this go through without anything being said about it. I was reading the article in the Times with regard to Inglewood, and I hope that this doesn't come back to bite us and to impact us with regard to how they pay their council people and what they do.
Mr. Fisher, is this on an agenda item right now?
Yeah, it's on the agenda items. It has to do with the accessor agency, with the public finance, with the Inglewood housing. So
Okay.
yes, it does.
Okay.
And I have a question with regard to that. That, as I said, they were doing an investigating the district attorney with regard to people being paid for these things. And my question to you and to our city manager maybe, do we have potentially the same problem where our council people are being paid
No.
for those? Well, that's a good answer. I thank you for that, and I will be back to ask you some other questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Frank, District 4, payment of the bills. You got an item on the payment of the bills for $15,051.61, and then another $823.54 to Office Depot. Man, that's a lot of pens and pencils. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll close public comment. Item 1, CSA 2 and H1.
Move allow payment of the bills.
Second.
Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye. Madam Clerk, what's the next scheduled matter?
The next scheduled matter is a public hearing to consider an ordinance to approve categorical exemptions and approve zoning code amendments to establish a definition of an anchor tenant.
Has the notice of the hearing been given in the time, form, and manner as required by law? And do you have the affidavit on file?
Notice has been given and affidavit is on file.
Is the complete file of the Planning Commission present?
Yes, it is.
Have any communications been received?
No communications have been received.
Mr. City Manager, is there a staff report?
Yes, Ms. Linda Tatum, Acting Economic and Community Development Director, will give the staff report.
Welcome, Ms. Tatum.
Thank you. Mayor Buds, City Council members, this is a cleanup item. It's a public hearing that was initially brought to the council. It's a continuation of an item that was considered by the council back in February of 2012 when the staff brought forward a recommendation from Planning Commission to amend the commercial shopping center standards. As a result of moving those revisions to the shopping center standards, one of the council members, Commissioner Franklin, requested that we bring back a definition for anchor tenant just to clarify that requirement. That's what this action is. The proposal, which was considered by the Planning Commission in June of 2012, was to adopt the recommended definition for anchor tenant. And I want to just talk a little bit about why it was important to have that anchor tenant requirement in the code. In the code, we talk about what anchor tenants are and what their purpose is. And generally, the city wanted to assure that when a new shopping center is built, that there are provisions in the plans that are approved for the shopping center to accommodate an anchor tenant. In the shopping center development industry, it's very common practice for a shopping center developer to try to attract an anchor tenant because they are the types of uses that provide community services, and they typically draw patrons to the shopping center. So it's in the developer's interest to have an anchor tenant, and the city wanted to ensure the viability of shopping centers by assuring that there was an opportunity to include an anchor tenant. So again, just to clarify, we wanted to define what an anchor tenant is and to establish some criteria for the number of anchor tenants based upon the size of the shopping center. And that's the consideration that you have before you this evening. And I'm prepared to respond to any specific questions you might have regarding the proposed definition.
Thank you. Are there any persons present who wish to address the council on this matter? All right, council questions? Are there any? Councilman Stevens?
Yes, Ms. Tatum. My concern is that we're saying that only 8,000 square feet constitutes an anchor tenant.
That's
I'm interpreting this correctly?
That's correct. That's the proposal.
Okay. Now, I would be more concerned with something more direct and more specific, to have maybe, say, perhaps a fly-by-night operation come in and then fail after 2 years, being identified as an anchor tenant. Shouldn't we somehow tie that to what identifies an anchor tenant more so according to how long that company has been in business? Because what we're actually doing here is more so we're dealing with a reduction. We're making a smaller shopping center being able to qualify and receive the same benefits as a major development. Am I interpreting this incorrectly here?
Not entirely. I think what we're doing is the standards in terms of the number of anchor tenants relative to the size of the shopping center. That has always been in the code since 2008, when the anchor tenant concept was first introduced to the code. The only thing we're doing here is defining what constitutes an anchor tenant. And the direction from council was to define it in a way that just made it clearer, so if someone comes in to propose a shopping center and they say, well, is this an anchor tenant, we can say, yes, that's an anchor tenant, because we can qualify the criteria being the size of their actual space that defines them as an anchor tenant. Because if you don't have a standard, then anybody could say, I'm an anchor tenant. Now, regarding the second part of your question about...
Just hold that
Sure.
thought. So we're qualifying an anchor tenant by the minimum square footage that they build for their facility, for their store?
The anchor tenant is only relative to the size of the shopping center. So we're saying that if you come in to build a shopping center, if your shopping center is defined in this case for a development that has 14,000 square feet, we're saying that because the code requires at least one of those be an anchor tenant, we're saying in order to be defined as an anchor tenant, you have to be at least 8,000 square feet and occupy at least 30% of the floor area for the entire shopping center, with the intent being to assure that we get the type of establishment that is going to be viable and do what the intent is, which is to draw patrons to the shopping center.
Okay, I understand what our intent is. I'm clear on that. I'm just not clear if this is how I'm interpreting. It says anchor tenant shall mean a business containing a minimum floor area of 8,000 square feet and shall include uses as grocery stores, bonds, drugstores, discount, gives examples, home improvement stores, Home Depot, department. And it lists the number of ones, Red Lobster, Target. And then it says movie theaters and similar uses that serve a primary draw to a shopping center. But it does not really address the issue of if they've ever had success at this. If all the person has to do is say, okay, well, I can develop 8,000 square feet, but I have no experience in running a movie theater, let's say, then what guarantee do we have that after 1 year they'll even be in business?
We don't have any guarantee, and the purpose of the zoning code isn't to guarantee the success of a business. The point of the zoning code primarily is to assure that you have some development standards for the various types of businesses that are permitted, because the way our zoning code works, and it's not ours isn't unusual or different from any other cities, it specifies the types of uses that are allowed in a particular zone, and the success of that business is, we like to encourage it or to do things to support it, but the city cannot require a performance standard for any business that comes into the city as a condition of them being able to come to the city.
We cannot demand a performance standard. We cannot say that we wish for all buildings in the city to have, let's say, a Spanish a Spanish facade appearance on the outside?
No, when I said performance standard, I was responding to your question about their success as a
Economic
business.
performance standards.
That's correct.
Okay.
But the development standard, those things that typically do get addressed in the code, like the height, the required parking, the design, yes, we can, but
Here's
not
my-
the economic success.
I would just like colleagues, if we are going to institute something of this magnitude, I would like for us, as the mayor had once stated, that everything should be uniform. We should have a uniform, how did you phrase it, Mr. Mayor? A uniform identity for this city, meaning that if we should have a think tank to say, okay, we are going to have Market Street have all, let's say, Spanish tile roofs, instead of a hodgepodge of what we have right now. This here impresses me as though all you need to do is basically build 8,000 square feet and you're considered an anchor tenant, without really getting into the nuts and bolts of how much of a setback must you have from the sidewalk. Are you going to have an anchor tenant must provide underground parking? Because of course, when it comes to property tax, our property tax is actually dictated by the structure that is on the building. For example, if we build a strip mall, which could actually constitute something such as this, and the majority of the property is parking lot, we're not generating any property tax from the parking lot.
Councilman Stevens, would you like another minute?
Oh, thank you, sir. The same as if it was the same as though it's the same as if it had an actual building. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The same as if it was an actual building on that structure. You follow me? If we're going to build a parking garage and it's multi-level, the land value then has a greater land value than if we just simply cap off the land and make it into just a parking lot, such as a strip mall. And so, colleagues, my concern is that by establishing this as an 8,000 square feet, and we're not placing in it anything in reference to the aesthetics, setbacks of what constitutes an anchor tenant, we leave ourselves sort of open, in my mind, to have possibly an anchor tenant that comes in and gives us something that we really may not want. And by defining what an anchor tenant is in this fashion, I think we should explore making this more detailed.
Could I add
Yes,
a comment?
please.
The anchor tenant doesn't change any of the development standards. The development standards that you mentioned in terms of parking, the design of the building, the height, the setback, all of those are in place now and would be applied to any project that came in just like they would today. This doesn't change any of the city's development standards. This only defines anchor tenant. The anchor tenant requirement has been in there since 2008, but we never defined it.
But when we identify it as an anchor tenant, that makes that entity eligible for funding from the city. Oftentimes, it also, no.
It does nothing other than just say here it's an anchor tenant. So when we're looking at the design of the shopping center, the requirement is that they have at least one anchor tenant in there. That's the only.
I just want to conclude with this because the mayor's been gracious enough to give me more time here, and I don't want to belabor this. But my only concern, colleagues, is this. If we can place a limitation, if we can place a restriction, a minimum floor area of 8,000 square feet, then it just seems to me that we can place other definitions here to more define what we as a body wish for our city to look like, say, in the next 10 or 15 years. And I'll conclude with that. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the additional time.
You're welcome. Councilman Dunlap? No comment? Any other comment?
Likewise, no comment.
Councilman Franklin?
You had some comment?
No.
Well, first of all, let me thank staff for your due diligence. Back in February, when this item came before us and we adopted a program, there was a question raised by the public about defining an anchor tenant, and particularly of major concern was fast food. And since we had a number of fast food restaurants saturated throughout the city, they did not want to identify that an anchor tenant would be that of a fast food. And so as a consequence, you did your due diligence, and I thank you and the staff and the Planning Commission in their efforts to identify the type of retailers that we're looking for as an anchor tenant. And you qualify that whether it be a grocery store, home improvement, or a bona fide set-down restaurant. And so that is outstanding. I understand also that as an anchor tenant, that it also has to, in addition to being a minimum 8,000 square feet, it also has to cover at least 30% of the the floor area for the entire shopping center. So that reinforces the threshold as to where we're trying to get, and it will help also put the residents at ease that we're not identifying fast food as an anchor tenant, but rather bona fide national tenants to be there. And be honest, there's a number of stores that are currently exist that are national tenants that are also downsizing in their operation their square footage as well. But it still gives them the threshold that they have to meet this threshold. And I want to thank you and the staff. Thank you, Mayor.
I want to move to waive further reading.
Second.
Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Stevens. Councilmember Stevens.
Yes, I'm.
This is
I know. Yeah,
waiving
way further reading. Aye. Sorry, I'm thinking about
Dunlap.
this. You're correct.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye.
I'll introduce.
Madam Clerk, what's the next scheduled matter?
The next scheduled matter is a public hearing to consider placing delinquent refuge and sewer accounts on the tax roll for the fiscal year of 2012 and 2013.
Has notice of the hearing been given in the time, form, and manner as required by law? And do you have the affidavit on file?
Notice has been given and affidavit is on file.
Is the complete file of the Planning Commission present?
We don't have a file on that. I don't have a file on that.
Okay. Have any communications been received on the matter?
No communications have been received.
Is there a staff report, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, Acting Finance Director Sharon Koike will introduce the presenter.
Welcome, Ms. Koike.
Actually, Mayor, if I may, Mr. City Manager, prior to her giving her staff report, I'd like to correct the record.
Okay.
It states here, actually my name is mentioned, it says Councilmember Dunlap inquired how these accounts can be delinquent if we only back bill for 6 months. First off, I never referenced back bill because it's not a terminology I use, nor was it even referenced to us. So that needs to be corrected on the staff report because this is a public document. And secondly, the question I posed was, we had just recently learned that we could only go back, we understood it, that you could only go back 6 months to collect for 6 months delinquency. That's not the same thing that's written on here. And that question has still not been answered because a residential property's bill cannot even reach the minimum threshold in 6 months. Commercial, absolutely, because of the amount of money, but not residential. That was a question I posed at the time we set the public hearing, I believe, and it's not been answered. And I do want this staff report corrected for future. So if someone wants this document, it's been corrected that this language be removed with regard to my comments.
All right. Ms. Koike.
I'd like to introduce Maria Haney, our Finance Supervisor, to present this item on the delinquent refuse bills.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Maria Haney, and I'm here to present the staff report to adopt this resolution to place the delinquent refuse and sewer charges on the property tax rolls for 2012 and 13.
Is there any more than that? Okay, go ahead.
On July 10th, there was 3 resolutions provided to you electing to place the sewer and
That's okay.
It's been given, so this is the public hearing.
Right.
Are there any questions?
Actually, Mayor, I would appreciate it prior to the public comments if my question that I asked at the time we set the public hearing, which I just reminded staff and Mr. Fields, if it could be responded to, please. Thank you.
Okay, the only question was, as it related to residential,
Yes.
that since the city can only go back 6 months according to our own rules, and the fact that a residential property likely could not reach the threshold level, then what is the purpose in applying this to residential properties? I believe, Councilwoman Dunlap, that was the question.
Unless there's a misunderstanding
Yeah,
on
no,
our part
no.
with regard to the municipal code.
So, if you have an answer, you don't have to give me an answer if you don't have one.
Okay.
Okay, you can say, I don't know, and that's okay.
I'll research that.
Okay, that's fine. But this does apply to commercial properties because the bill could reach that threshold.
Correct.
All right.
But Mayor, with your permission,
Yes.
we are not allowed to Okay, I want to clarify that I think the misunderstanding is, and it could be wrong on my part, there is a code in the municipal that states that we are not allowed to back bill for 6 months. These charges that are on this lien have been billed on a monthly basis. We just have not been able to collect.
Okay.
So that's what I was trying to clarify.
Okay, then if I may, then this body, we may have been misinformed because we were told as a body that we could not, go, at least that's my interpretation, and I think the mayor would agree, that we could not go back and bill for charges that were older than 6 months. That was our understanding, and that's what we wanted clarification. So apparently, what our understanding of the code as presented to us was inaccurate. If what you're saying is true, then we were just misinformed.
Actually,
accept that.
I just to clarify my view of it, it was we couldn't find out a year later that we forgot to bill and then say, oh, we can go back and ask for it. That's my understanding, and we couldn't do that. But if we had continually billed with the knowledge and notice to the resident, then we are well within our right to continue to follow through and collect, which is what you're saying, correct?
Absolutely.
So the ordinance applies to people we failed to bill for 6 months, then
Right.
we don't have the right to go back and
We cannot go back to 6 months.
Well, then that makes
for the
everything
service.
relevant.
Yes, thank you for
Okay.
that clarification.
Thank
We
you.
were misinformed.
Thank you very much. Are there any persons present who wish to address the council on the matter?
Yes, I kept on reading the 90-day comment, and maybe the rest of the community would like to hear about the 90 days and the total amount, and there is no list out there. We don't know if there are 5 that owe $1,000,000 and 300 that owe $3. We have no clue. And the constant reference in that staff report is a 90-day comment.
Is there any other public comment? Yes, please come forward, Ms. Austin. This is actually about the back billing for delinquent refuse and sewer accounts.
Okay.
Being placed on the property roll if people don't pay their bills.
Oh, okay.
After a certain amount of time, after they owe a certain amount of money.
Oh, because I wanted to mention something about the sewer, because I know that you all went up on the sewer, so I have been many places where it's leakage, Mayor.
Okay, well, you know, that would probably be better at the end. That's not on this specific
okay.
item, but I'd be glad to hear you at the end of the meeting.
Sure. There you go.
I received a letter. My name is George Silva, and I own 10111 Hawthorne Boulevard. And I received a notice that that there's delinquent and refuge charges are going to be placed on my tax roll by at least 90 days to cover the $250 on the property tax roll collection. The amount is $788, and they have a gentleman by Francisco Villapondo that he no longer rents from me, and I also have a judgment issued against him, and he also, I don't know if finance has a promissory note from this individual, and he hasn't been my tenant for at least 7 months, 8 months, and the city is trying to place a tax lien hold on my property taxes. And I just wondered if there's been some mistake as to the renter, where he's issued a promissory note of over $5,000 of delinquent sewer and refuge, and he's given a promissory note to the city of Inglewood promising to pay all this back. But I have a court order of eviction dated September of 11, and he hasn't been my tenant since that time, even though I just got a letter from the city asking me to pay $788, and this gentleman owes over $5,000. And so I think there's a big mistake here as far as the finance department has issued to me, but I understand because I'm the property owner, I'm being charged that. So there's a grave mistake here, sir.
Okay. Is it Mr. Villapondo? Was that it?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Quicky's right there by the door. If you'd give her your name, I'm sure we'll do a couple of things. One, we'll research your situation, and two, we'll check with the city attorney's office and see if the ultimate responsibility is with the landowner or if there's some way that it would rest with the renter. But you do have a valid concern, and Ms. Quick will take your information.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, just for a point of clarification, was the landowner, property owner sent copies of the bill on a regular basis? I think we've had a lot of discussion here over the years with regard to these liens to make sure that the property owner is sent a duplicate bill. So
Yes,
do we
ma'am.
have evidence of that in all
Yes,
of these
ma'am.
cases?
Yes, we do.
Mr. Fisher, please come forward.
Thank you.
You know, with regard to this, it's my concern that, you know, these absentee landlords who might be responsible for these sewer and refuge charges probably should be held accountable for them, because you know, the residents that rent these places, you know, they just rent them. I would think that most residents, individual residents, would pay their sewer and refuge things, but it concerns me that with regard to absentee landlords, that this is where the impact would be, because they could say, well, you know, I never received a bill or whatever, you know, because maybe it goes to some tenant or maybe even a manager or whatever, you know. As long as this doesn't impact, and I don't see that you could make it so that it would not impact residents, individual residents, because I think that they would pay their sewer and their refuge. But when it comes to these absentee landlords, I think that's where the impact probably could and should be looked at.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Any further public comment? Closed public comment. Is there any council comment or questions?
Yes, Mayor.
Councilman Franklin?
Yes, just want to acknowledge that in the staff report does indicate that the Finance Department will work directly with property owners to resolve the issues. So these are tenants that are Inglewood residents that have defaulted in payment, and then the landlord is notified that your tenant is not paying for this refuge and water, refuge and trash service, refuge and sewer service, and as a consequence, we're putting you on notice that your tenant has not paid. Therefore, you as a landlord have an obligation because a service has been provided. And we're talking $161,000 that needs to go back to the general fund that has not been paid by the tenant. So now the landlord is now faced with this bill. So just want to be made aware of what that issue is and how the Finance Department, even though this may be a direction given to council, given to staff to move forward on that along with the city clerk, but it is in fact an opportunity that they could still work with the landlord in lieu of it being put on as a lien on their property. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Okay, is there a motion? 2 and 3.
Move approval.
Move items 1. I second items 1, 2, and 3.
Madam City Clerk?
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Dunlap?
Aye.
Morales?
Aye.
Franklin?
Aye.
Mayor Butts?
Aye. Consent calendar items 2 through 5. Move approval.
Second.
Pull item 5.
Pull 5. Madam City Clerk?
Councilmembers Stevens?
Aye.
Dunlap?
Aye.
Morales?
Aye.
Franklin?
No, aye.
Mayor Butts?
Aye. Item 5.
Staff report recommending approval of the final parcel map number 70519 to consolidate 2 lots into 1 at 10814 South Yukon Avenue and accept all offers of dedication.
You have any questions, Councilman?
Well, I just wanted to make a statement, and I wanted to ask staff a question very quickly.
Mr. Lockhart, welcome. Question for Mr. Lockhart?
Mr. Lockhart, this particular lot is in District 4, correct? As in, this is in my colleague's district, from District 4, correct?
I believe that's the case, Councilman.
Okay. And it says here, upon completion of the project, the subject property site will have a total of 3 units and 2 3-car garages, correct?
Yes, that's what's indicated in the staff report.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. All right, now I'll refer to my colleague since this is in his district, and I'll follow his lead.
Councilman Franklin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lockhart, for coming. A couple items I want to be of concern with. One is I asked to have a map, and I didn't recall seeing the map that's in the council packet. Only shows the pre-existing buildings and not the proposed project. That's number one. Number two, I raised the issue with staff of concerns that has the landlord stayed in compliance with the Inglewood municipal codes, because we have had tendencies of the current structures being of issue, as well as the maintenance of the property, including the number of dogs that was on the site. So I'm not here to support a development if, in fact, this person has not owned up to be a responsible neighbor. Can you respond to that?
You asked two questions about MAP and the landlord being in compliance. My role in this process as acting city engineer is to deal with the offer of dedication associated with the parcel map. I'm not knowledgeable about the landlord being in compliance relative to appropriate code requirements of the city. With regard to the map being provided, I did not have that awareness. That's something that was desired beyond the map that's included in your packet showing the property lines and the dedication.
Well, and let me step a little further. The property's on the southeast corner of 108th and Yukon, and it currently is a single dwelling, one-story unit. Next door to that property are two units that actually are multi-level and has been recently remodeled. I question now what impact it may have on the traffic flow when in fact it is on that corner, and 108th is highly utilized by the fire department and other large vehicles that go down that road. So that's why I needed to see the plans to get a better view as to what flow of traffic is going to have an impact on 108th as opposed on Yukon Avenue. And then also be mindful that this is a pedestrian crossing that houses the Morningside High School, and also if you go south, it would also handle Worthington Elementary School. And so I want to make sure we weigh that as an option, that it will not impede the pedestrian traffic, particularly during peak times during school periods.
City Manager?
Mayor and Councilmember Franklin and Council, we are providing Councilmember Franklin with the map that he requested earlier today. So if he has any questions based on that map, we're prepared to answer.
Councilman, would you want this held over until you got the map? It's up to you. It's up to you.
Mayor, if it's nothing urgent, can this be revisited and have this item brought back to us next week?
That's fine.
I don't believe there's anything urgent.
Or the next council meeting?
All right, we can hold it over.
Yeah.
Okay. DR1. What's it? Oh, well, it won't be next week. I don't think we have a council meeting next week.
14th.
14th?
14th. Oh, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. DR1.
Staff report recommending adoption of a resolution amending the fiscal year 2011 and 12 budget to transfer $1,750,000 to purchase potable water and $250,000 to purchase recycled water.
Move approval.
Second.
Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Dunlap.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye. DR2.
City of Inglewood, fiscal year 2010-2011, single audit report.
Ms. Quickie.
Projector. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight it is recommended that the Mayor and City Council take the following actions. To receive an oral presentation from the city's auditor, the audit firm of Mayor Hoffman and McCann, and this would be on the 2010-2011 city financial audit. We had indicated that back in July 10th, when we asked you to receive and file the audit report, that we would come back and provide an informational presentation for you, and then to receive and file the city's single audit report for fiscal 2010 and 2011. The city is, just to give you a little background, the city is up to date on all of our audits. The fiscal 2010-11 basic financial statements were presented to you on July 10th. These documents were then used as part of the bond financing transactions and were submitted to the underwriters who were working on refinancing the 1999A bonds. And it was agreed at the time that we would come back and present to you an oral presentation of the audit. Tonight we have the auditor, Mr. Matt Lenton is present, and he was going to make a presentation to you on the fiscal audit. And I'm sorry, I have to change the presentation. It's the wrong one.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. I'll let staff get the next presentation up before I start.
Yeah. In the movie industry, this would be called B-roll right now.
Okay, this looks more familiar. Good evening. My name, as Sharon had mentioned, is Matt Lenton. I am the audit partner responsible for the City of Inglewood audit. We have completed our audit, and I'm here today to go over the results. I'd first like to start with our SAS 114 auditor communications with those in governance. These are our responsibilities to communicate to you. I'll highlight some of the key areas. Most importantly, we have issued an unqualified opinion dated June 28th, 2012. An unqualified opinion is the best opinion you can receive from a financial statement audit. It's also important for me to remind you that our responsibility as the auditors is to plan and perform the audit in order to gather evidence that will reasonably assure us that there are no material misstatements in the financial statements. In our audit, we do not review every single transaction, but we use certain procedures required by our standards to gather evidence that is needed to support our opinion that the financial statements are free from material misstatements. Management of the city is responsible for the accounting records and those financial statements. We also want to point out that the significant accounting policies used by the city are detailed in footnote 1 of the financial statements. And during the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2011, the city did implement a new accounting standard, GASB Standard 54, which made some significant presentation changes to your financial statements. Our professional standards also require that we remind those charged with governance that significant judgments and estimates are made by management in preparing these financial statements. These judgments and estimates are evaluated through our audit procedures, but they are ultimately the responsibility of management. I've listed out some of the significant judgments and estimates included in the financial statements. We are also required to inform governance when material audit adjustments are detected through the course of the audit. Those adjustments have been included in our reports. The adjustments have also been approved and reviewed by city management and staff and have been properly reflected in your accounting records. I'm pleased to report throughout the course of our audit, management and staff were responsive to all audit inquiry, made available all records we requested, and we were very appreciative of all the support that they gave us through this process. Also included in our report are references to significant events that occurred during this fiscal year. Those events disclosed include the state law, which mandated the dissolution of the redevelopment agencies, as well as the cooperation agreement between the city and the Inglewood Redevelopment Agency, dated January 25th, 2011. These events warranted disclosures as they had significantly changed or impacted operations of the city. I'd like to now transition to a brief highlight of the general fund financial statements for the fiscal year ended September 30, 2011. The general fund balance as of September 30th was approximately $14,250,000. The fund balance this year had decreased $2.6 million from the prior year. Although a decrease in fund balance is not desired, this chart shows that the city has taken some necessary steps to correct the trends of 2009 and 10. In looking at revenues and expenditures of the general fund brought in $76,522,000 of general fund revenues, which represents a 1.7% increase over 2010. On the other side, expenditures of the general fund were $79,150,000, which represents a 14.9% decrease in general fund expenditures over the prior year. The results of the general fund for the year ended September 30th, 2011 do show expenditures exceeding revenue by approximately $2.6 million, but this is clearly, in our opinion, a positive change from the past 2 years' trends. Lastly, I do want to indicate that during the course of our audit, we have identified several areas for improvement within the city's internal controls over financial reporting and compliance. And these comments have been communicated to management, and they are included in our reports. It's also important that I mention, although we did identify areas of improvements, we noted that 8 of the comments that we had previously issued in prior years were properly attended to and corrected by staff. That concludes my comments, and I'd be happy to address any questions you have.
Council members?
Yes, I have just a few.
Councilman Stevens?
You state in your document, you state that the audit disclosed 27 material weaknesses in internal control over financial reporting. Could you just briefly just encapsulate what they are specifically?
Generally, or do you want to go through each one?
Your audit disclosed 27 material weaknesses in internal control over financial reporting. Just specifically.
I think
that's a staff report. I can go over those.
I think he wants to understand
just general idea.
Generally, what that means.
This is in your document. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Our findings deal with not only financial reporting but also compliance. They don't specifically deal just with finance. They deal with various departments. A majority of our comments, or a good deal of them, deal with different federal grant programs where we did testing and found instances where a particular compliance requirement wasn't adhered to. We also have made comments in terms of the financial reporting controls. When we detect audit adjustments, that leads us to believe that there is something in the system that isn't properly functioning, and we have given staff recommendations to improve those actions going forward. There are also other comments that we have given that we feel would be best practice considerations or just general significant items that we identified in the audit.
Okay, you're not giving me what I'm looking for, but let me ask it this way.
Okay.
The audit disclosed 12 matters of noncompliance. What were they? So the public will know.
Do you have our single audit report with you?
It's in my office.
Okay.
Want me to go get it? Okay.
That won't be necessary.
I can tell you. Would you like to know the numbers?
I want you to tell us. Tell the people.
Our considerations of internal control over compliance were limited to the purpose described in our audit opinion, and the deficiencies described in our schedule of findings and recommendations, or findings and question cost, that dealt with compliance was finding number 2, 4, 6, 7, 11, 21 through 27. Now, that's the reference. I can go through each of those if you'd like to go through those.
Yes.
Okay.
Just, just identify, just encapsulate.
Okay. Finding number 2 was need for improved accounting and monitoring over first-time home buyer rehabilitation loans. Finding number 4. Need to improve controls over taxes and grant receivable accruals. Finding number 6. Need to update cost allocation plan. Finding number 7. Need for inventory of city-owned vehicles. Finding number 11. Need for segregation of restricted grant funds being recorded in the same fund.
Now that's commingling, correct? Commingling of grant funds,
That
right?
could be a way of describing it.
Mr.
It's
City Attorney, is that appropriate for us to do that? Is that legal for us to do that?
No, that's what he said.
It's not commingling of funds. It's recording 2 different programs in a single fund. Commingling of cash is not what we are saying. We are saying 2 individual types of programs being recorded
Meaning
in
that
one
if
fund.
I have sound installation and we're taking sound installation funds and we're reallocating it to a different fund, is that what you're referring to?
No, that is not.
That's not?
Ms. Koike?
If I can clarify, that particular finding, let me just explain. There are a couple of funds that we have, like our Prop 1A, Measure R, Prop C, and those monies are recorded in the same fund. What we're currently trying to do is break that out because it will make a lot of things easier for us as far as auditing and reporting. But because they've been combined in the one fund for a period of time, we're going back as far as we can to verify and confirm and move forward so that that can be separated out. What we're trying to do is as we go forward and set these procedures in place, we're trying to do them so it simplifies a lot of the work. But that was something that was done a while ago, and so we are still in the process of breaking those funds out. That's the audit finding that he's referring to.
Okay.
Audit finding number 21 is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards preparation. Okay. Audit finding number 22 would be highway and planning construction. There was a comment on timely request for reimbursements.
Okay, and all these we were in non-compliance with, right?
They were instances of non-compliance, correct.
Okay.
22, highway planning and construction. Oh, sorry, reread that one. Number 23 was Section 8 voucher program. We had a comment on administration of tenant files.
Okay.
Number 24. The community development block grant. We had a comment over reporting, financial reporting. Comment number 25 was with the FAA program over reporting.
Now, over-reporting as far as what?
A compliance issue dealing with a reporting compliance requirement.
The city's compliance with reporting, correct?
Right.
In reference to how much money the city's received and how the city has spent the money?
No.
No?
There are reports that are required to be submitted for many of the grants. We are indicating that a report didn't meet that compliance requirement.
All right. Once again, the grants that are the applications that are submitted, the audit reports, they're for funding, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the city did not submit them in a timely manner, correct?
Correct.
All right. What else did you find?
Comment number 26 in the, again, CDBG program. Program income loan repayments was a comment that we identified. And lastly, comment number 27. In the neighborhood stabilization program, we had another comment over compliance reporting.
Okay. Now, let me ask you, I just want to ask one question. In your opinion, would you say that our problem is a department management head problem? In your observation, you're our auditor. Is that the problem? The people who are managing these departments, they're not actually doing what they should be doing, or what would you think? What would you say the problem is here, sir? Not our city manager. I'm not referring to our city manager. I'm referring. What would you say the problem is?
I am not in a position to give you an opinion. I don't do a management audit. I would say that there are significant issues that the city has faced over the last 18 months. I think turnover in management and staff, the budget constraints and reduced staffing has obviously been an impact on almost all the departments. And I think the significant transactions with redevelopment really changed the priorities of staff, as well as the new financing that just happened. So I think there are a lot of significant issues that staff is tending to. And when you have limited numbers, I'm assuming that is leading to some of these issues.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. City Manager and then Councilwoman Dunlap.
If I can just add that if you, in the report, while he's identified a number of findings, you will see staff's response to those findings. And in those responses, we do indicate that all of the findings are being addressed and will be addressed within the next year or so. So it's not that we're ignoring them. There are things that they're currently working on at this time. In addition, most of the findings occurred prior to 2010. So in terms of looking to determine whether or not this reflects poorly on Sharon's management, I think she's...
No. Yeah, I wasn't referring to Ms. Koike. I'm referring department heads.
Right.
Not me, not Ms. Koike.
That's
I'm referring to...
Yes, she is the department head.
I understand it, but we have various departments. We have, for instance, RSI, Residential Sound Insulation. That's a department.
I just want to clarify that her and her staff are doing an admirable job identifying and addressing the issues in these findings, and that the majority of them will be completed over the next year, and she's in the process of doing that now.
We have a Public Works department. We have numerous departments here.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Koike, did you want to say something else?
Yes, I just want to explain something a little further. Part of the single audit is when they're required to do compliance procedures. When they select a population or something to audit, they select the field. There are certain requirements that they must look at and verify it is or it isn't there. They may look at a report and we may be, for instance, we may be late on submitting a report. It doesn't mean that we didn't submit it, but it's a finding, so they have to mark it as a finding. What they do is they represent it to us as a finding, and then we as staff, and actually it's citywide, because what we're trying to do too is, it's like he mentioned, it's not just necessarily finance, it's all the departments overall. And as we try to correct these findings, because our goal is to remove the finding, then if we have to put in policies and procedures, we work together as a team, how we're going to do this, how are we going to address this, and how are we going to avoid this from happening. That's the progress that we've been doing. We won't see the results of that until they come back again and do an audit. And when they go through and they select their population of test samples, if they don't find a finding, then they will see that we've corrected it. So I just wanted to elaborate on that.
Councilwoman Dunlap.
Yes, thank you. I have a couple of questions for Mr. Linton. Is it true that most of the findings that you referenced here are prior to 2010?
Prior to 2011. Out of the 27 findings, 21 of them are repeat findings or findings of similar nature in prior years.
Okay. So it's not a true statement that they were prior to 2010. That was a statement made here. I just want to correct the record.
I think it was referring to most of the comments that we've went over are comments that existed not in the 2010-11 year. They existed prior to that.
So, but the findings, if they're still there in the new audit,
comment.
They're repeated, meaning they're still there.
There are still, yes, there are still
Okay, well
issues.
then that actually, so the statement that they're all prior to 2010 doesn't sound
They've
accurate.
been in existence since then, but
Okay,
they are
it's in
still...
existence and not remedied to the satisfaction of the auditors.
Correct. Yes,
okay, well then that's a problem for us as a city. Do we have an inventory of city-owned vehicles, Mr. Fields? Do we have an inventory of city-owned vehicles?
We have an inventory, but I think the audit finding suggested that we go out and do an actual update. We have a computer system that inventories all of our buildings, but do more of a field check of those vehicles that are out in the field as compared to what we have on our computer.
Right. Well, that's what I'm asking. Do we have?
We do have a computer system.
No, I didn't ask about an inventory means something that's accurate. So have we done that type of a field check to make sure that the inventory is accurate?
And that's what the finding recommends, and we will be doing that.
Okay. When did that finding, was that brought to the attention of the city with regard to the inventory of city-owned vehicles that you referenced?
I can tell you, I don't have all of my prior year
Sure,
reports
I
with me,
understand.
but it is a prior year comment, so
It's
it
a
was
prior
in
year
existence.
comment. Well, then I'm just stating generally on the record. It's unacceptable to this member of the body that a finding of prior years, and this is 2010, 2011,
Yes, ma'am.
and a finding that was found before then, we still haven't done it yet. So that's a concern that this body has. So we've not actually corrected some of these things that have been there for a while. I would appreciate it if you'd find on the graph, I didn't see a page number, but it was a bar graph, and you talked about general funds, and you referenced the fact that because the general funds were higher, like in 2000, say 10 or something, things were going. It wasn't that. It was the vertical.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Maybe this is it. But you made a comment about we were doing better with regard to generating general fund revenue based on this graph. Is that kind of it?
My point, and I apologize for not being clear, was indicating that the gap between revenues over expenditures has become much tighter.
Are you aware whether any of those revenues are one-time revenues or ongoing revenues?
The majority of the revenues in the general fund are reoccurring revenues. Those are.
I know what the majority are, but I'm saying I think it was Mr. Fields. When was it that we put? Was it $4 million from the sale of property from the redevelopment agency to the city, which would have been general fund? What year was that placed in as a general fund revenue?
This year, but that is not included in those
Well,
numbers.
Mr. Fields, it wasn't this year.
2010-11.
Yeah, 2010-11, and those funds are not included in the numbers that he's
So that was
representing.
2010-11, which would be last year. So when you list general fund revenue, you've excluded that? Because it was general fund.
Correct. That transaction occurred in the year we audited. The purpose of this report was to identify general revenues that are recorded as reoccurring activities, as well as expenditures that are reoccurring.
So we're talking
The
2000,
special
would it be
items that-
2010 or 2011? What number would I reference?
11.
70
And it is not
76.
included in there.
So you're saying if it were included, it'd be over $80 million in revenue to the general fund?
Correct. And this also does not include transfers out that have not been represented on my particular graph.
Okay. Ms. Quakey, then 2011, over $80 million in revenues?
Including that sale, that is correct.
Yeah, but I'm not aware that that's reflected in
I'm
some of our
sorry?
documents. That's what I'm asking.
In what documents are you
Some
referring?
city documents,
Oh, okay, I'm
not,
sorry.
not your
I
audit.
could show you in the reports.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. The
Well, we're going to have, I know we're going to be doing something, financial update a little bit later, but where do you show that in 2011 we have over $80 million in revenue in the general fund? In our documents?
Actually, I believe they're in the 2011 numbers.
You believe that 76 million includes it?
Yes.
Well, so do I, and that's my question. Meaning $4 million is a lot of money. I think that's one time that's in there.
Yes, it is in there.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
So it is in there.
It is in your records. Now, if you're referring
Right,
to my
but I
records,
actually-
my
Ms.
report, what I'm suggesting to you is that there are revenues of taxes, license permits, fines and forfeitures, investment income, intergovernmental revenues. Those are reoccurring revenues is what I'm reporting here. I'm also reporting here regular general expenditures for salaries and
Yes,
staff.
I understand. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Just a moment, please, because I do have a time constraint.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Quakey has already stated that for 2011, she believes the 76 million includes the 4 million.
It does
because
not.
Well, then we'd have to have documents that show we
All
have
right.
over 80 million.
It's
And-
in our audit report.
We have over 80 million someplace?
Not someplace.
It was revenue that was recorded for the 2010-11 year. General revenues was $76,522,000. You had transfers into the general fund of $6.5 million.
On
You had
top of the 76?
That's what he's saying.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because you mentioned 4, but now you're
Would
saying
you
there's
like me
another
to
2.
go through the rest of?
Well, actually, I would like to see, not necessarily at this meeting in this particular environment, but I need to see those figures, if you don't mind, sir. I really would appreciate it,
are in
because
the reports that
now
we
you're
issued.
talking about another $6 million in general fund revenues, and The graph shows 76, another 6 million would be 82, and we don't have 82. So I don't understand that, and I would like to have a, but this is not the place. So I would appreciate having an opportunity to either sit down and talk with you, or if you have the documents written out, I just don't have them in front of me, I'd be happy to look at those.
Please let me know, absolutely.
But I do appreciate the audit that you've done for us. Let me see if I have another question for Ms. Quickie, if I may. Thank you.
Would you like another minute, Councilman?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right.
It does seem to me, Mr. Fields, that based on Mr. Linton's the findings with regard to our audit, not only 2010, 2011, but the prior findings, and the findings, just to sort of go over it again for the public, are negative things with regard to our general bookkeeping, so to speak. And we seem to have a real serious issue with compliance reporting, federal money. It's all about the money. You know, that's what we get the most complaints about. This is not for you, sir. This is general cities. We have people come before us on a weekly basis talking about where's the money, who's watching the money, what's happening to the money. The money's always talked about here at our city council. And now we have an auditor who's done a good job presenting information to us, and all of the findings, which are very negative, deal with our lack of oversight, our lack of due diligence with the money. Not reporting it properly, not keeping the right records, not sending the right records on, files, that we have problems with files, which deal with money. Millions of dollars come into us for us to have programs to benefit our community, and we kind of drop the ball. We're not doing them well. That's a responsibility of this council and administration to make sure it's done right, and I want a change. Finance can only deal with the documentation provided to them. I'm talking about at different levels of the city, and I think it's a very serious issue that needs to be addressed on a regular basis. And I, for one, would like an update from city administration sometime next couple of months before the budget with regard to all of these issues, all of these findings, and what is being done to actually correct them. And if we have some problems in departments, I want those departments fixed. Because once again, Ms. Quakey can only deal with what she's provided with. And if she's given faulty information that's lacking in detail, or paperwork that's missing, she can only do so much. It's not a finance problem per se. It's about finance, but it has to do with the people problems in other departments and these programs not being managed up to what we as a community deserve. And so it's going to rest on your shoulders. So if you bring that back to us in a format so we can discuss it further, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I can do that, but just so you'll know that those corrective actions that we are taking are in the report. So if you want to know what we're doing to correct those actions, those findings.
I want more detail, Mr. Fields, and I'm
Okay.
sure you'll be willing to provide that to us. Thank you very much.
Councilman Franklin. Morales, I'm sorry.
Part of the benefit, I guess, in speaking third is that my first two colleagues cover a wide range of ground, which is good.
You're welcome, Mr. Morales.
Thank you very much. The situation now, just going right to some of the points that were made. First, before that, I got to say that this particular process of the audit has you going through our books basically and coming back and saying, hey, this is what I find. These are things you need to work on that we want to target and flag, but this is what is accurate right now. Now, because it is so close right there, and in turn, there was $4 to $6 million that were discussed by Ms. Dunlap. That is a fair question in saying, hey, you know, it shows that we brought in 76, but if we brought in another 6, then instead of 2,636,000 below, we'd actually be good. So it's actually an important comment. I do want you to answer that, and I'll definitely leave enough time for you to do that. But going one step further, in terms of how you've identified these issues and how you've identified the fact of they need to be addressed, can we, Mr. Fields, in terms of the actual issues? No, I know they've been noted, but I want to give the opportunity because the last thing, I think it's important that the public, when we leave here, we understand that the audit, the first statement made by the auditor was the fact that an unqualified audit means, what does it mean?
It's the best opinion you can get from a financial statement
Exactly.
audit.
But I think that even in that scenario, there are places that we as a city A city of this magnitude has a lot of places we can work on. And it's important that we get a professional, independent auditor to come in and point those out every year. And that helps us address them, go specifically to where the problems are. And that's why I think it's important that we clarify the question that was brought up in terms of the $6 million, which was a good question. And then I know that these specific issues are being addressed. You've said that. But for instance, the one about the vehicles and the inventory for them, something like that to a layperson such as ourselves in terms of fiscal management for a city may appear to be something simple. Line up the cars, count them. Okay? So if you can address that just briefly as an example to one of the ways that we're doing resolving that issue. Can you do that? And then, sir, can you briefly address the question of the $6 million and clarify that for us? And then I'm done. Thank you.
Well, the example would be basically the Public Works Department will go out and take a physical inventory of the vehicles that are out in the field and then compare that to what we have on our computers. So they're in the process of doing that reconciliation, and that will address that finding.
When is that happening?
It's occurring right now. So,
and if you could just answer that second question.
Yes. In my report, and I must apologize, I tried to give you information that I thought would be relevant, and I may have confused you. The information reported here, as I mentioned before, is what we would typically call reoccurring revenues and reoccurring expenses. What's not included on my schedule, but what is included in our financial statements and in the city's records, are additional transfers into the general fund of $6.5 million. There are transfers out of the general fund to other funds of $11.8 million, and there is also proceeds from a sale of an asset of $5.2 million. All of those net, and they're in our report on page 65, to $9,674.
And that's what
those are ins and outs that don't have a significant impact on what I was trying to present here of the revenues over expenditures and the gap being closed.
But I appreciate the clarification.
Councilman Franklin.
Yes, thank you. Let me just piggyback with my colleagues. First of all, I want to thank the staff because our audits are current. And what's significant about the audits being current, and the mayor want to elaborate a little bit more, is that it was this council that made the decision about seeking bond counseling to be able to improve the quality of life when you come to our city buildings. And as of today, those bonds were sold and approved, and so we have $10.2 million of new money that the city had this council had not took the initiative and uniformly made this happen. So thanks to this current audit, we're able to move forward. But now dealing with this current audit, Mr. City Manager, I understand you've identified that you and the staff as specific issues are being addressed, but the problem I have is that I don't see the projected date of completion. So when I'm looking at items that, as my colleagues brought up specifically about certain items that has now been fermenting for like 2 years, when is that going to meet the threshold as to when this matter can be resolved? I also want to thank this council and the city manager and staff to reach out and maintain the services of this auditing firm that will be with us until 2014 to help us oversee to make sure that these items are corrected and any others that may happen between now and 2014. My comment reached out to you or staff is that one of the problems we've had is when there was a transition of the IBM mainframe closing down and the Eden system coming up. And there was a number of accounts that fell through the crack. In your auditing reports, were you able to discover that so that way we can bring this up current, and it also involves the notification of a service provided, and we didn't bill the recipient in a timely manner. I need to make sure that this audit reflected that, and that the staff has now gave a correction on how that's going to be addressed. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, we do have a few comments that do, I believe, circle around the issue of your account, general ledger accounts, and then sub-ledger accounts, which has the detailed information that tells you who is owed or who you have to pay. A lot of those records are not as detailed as they should be in the current system, and I believe the history was in the prior system that didn't get transitioned over, however, more than 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago. Could be more. It was before our time. So a lot of our comments do, I think, reflect that issue that took place.
And the reason why I bring it up, for obvious reasons, that there was a discussion earlier on another agenda item whereby when we discover it, how far back can we then bill that organization that even may be beyond 6 months, which was supposed to be the cap when we first say, okay, now we found out we've been providing you this service for a year, but we can only capture 6 months because we never billed you for it. That has been corrected regarding the discussion we had regarding the sewer issues, but I'm concerned now, are there things in this report that requires our due diligence for prompt and action in order for us to notify the services or product we may have provided that we are in fact stopping the bleeding and making sure that services and product being provided that we actually get the benefit to go into our general fund or other accounts.
I think the area that we have identified that most specifically relates to what you're discussing is our comments over timely billing in the grant-related programs. Obviously, that is not a situation where you're necessarily going to lose the money, but ultimately there are time requirements on that. And each grant is different, so I don't know what they are, but those are areas where we would and have asked staff to be diligent about doing regular billings to ensure that the city does not put themselves in a position to lose any of that grant funding.
And as you've indicated, and not necessarily am I referring to just grants, because actually there was a contract that impacts the entire city that, unfortunately for us, the service was being provided and we weren't billing the operation that such a bill existed until all of a sudden we found it. So I'm glad to see that one of the items you talk about is improve their controls that I've noticed. And so that's why I'm reaching out to the city manager and staff to make sure that we don't have any more of these glitches, because it's detrimental to the city. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Is it Mr. Hinton?
Lenton.
Lenton? Let me ask you a question. You, when I came to the city, we were behind, I think, 4 audits. How many audits did you do for us?
You were behind 3 audits, and we did all 3 of those.
You did 3 audits. And how many years did those audits encompass?
I'm sorry?
How many years? 3 years of audits?
We did 2007 and 8. No, I'm sorry, 8 and 9. We then completed 2010, and now this would be our 4th audit we've completed in 11.
So by my estimation, those audits encompass 3 different city managers, 4 city managers.
That's correct.
3 finance managers, including Ms. Quakey.
That's correct.
It encompassed a changeover in computer system from our IBM mainframe to the Eden system. And in that, you found 27 material weaknesses for things where we didn't report on a grant on time, pay a bill on time, 27 in 3 years worth of audits, 4 years worth of audits. Is that correct?
That is correct. Okay. There are certain comments that have been rectified, and there are other comments that have come
and some of them are rolling because they happen from year to year. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the actual total number of weaknesses would be less, but some are repeats, and I'm getting somewhere. Ms. Quakey, how many thousands of transactions would you say the city engages in a year's time? Thousands of physical transactions that they could analyze and say it could be a weakness if they weren't done properly.
Between tens, possibly hundreds of thousands?
I would say hundreds of
thousands
of individual transactions. So in 3 years' time, hundreds of thousands of transactions over multiple years, which could be like 300,000 transactions. You found 27 instances where we didn't comply. Did you find one instance where someone misspent or didn't account for money?
We have not identified in our time here at the city any items that we felt were fraudulent or inappropriate. Okay. We have found issues where documentation wasn't as appropriate, but not that the transaction itself wasn't approved or legitimate.
So you encompassed over 4 years of audits, 4 times it'd be about $320 million worth of transactions, not including redevelopment transactions. which would then put us into close to $1 billion of transactions, and you didn't find one dime missing. Is that correct?
In our items that we tested, we did not find what you're suggesting.
That's what I'm asking you. So what I'm professing right now is that Mr. Weinberg before you, Mr. Fields now, Ms. Quickie definitely, who was put in an acting position to take care of all these changes that occurred over multiple years, and to get to the point where these audits haven't been done and come to where we have 27 weaknesses where we didn't do things quite right, but with no missing money. I think you've done an admirable job. And Mr. Fields, I think you have as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Where are they? DR2, no, DR3. Receive and file the city's single audit report for year 2010-2011. DR3.
Okay. Fiscal year 2011-2012 third quarter review and financial update.
Receive and file. But Mrs. Quakey.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. The budget team has conducted a review of the third quarter review for fiscal 2011-2012, placing an emphasis on the general fund. We've now completed this review for 75% or 9 months of the fiscal year, 3 quarters, and this is covering the period through June 30, 2012. As of June 30, 2012, our revenue receipts for the general fund were $62.2 million, or we were at 80% of our initial projected budget of $77.5 million. Our general fund expenditures were $55.1 million, or 68% of our approved $80.5 million expenditure budget. To kind of go over an overview of our third quarter, just to give you a little bit of an update, we did approve on September 28th, 2011, we did adopt a budget with an $855,000 structural deficit in it. We anticipated at the time that we would use reserves to close the structural shortfall, although we did mention that we would continue to look throughout the year for ways of reducing expenses and looking for any unforeseen revenues that we would generate. In March of 2012, we did present to you the first quarter report. That basically was a financial status update. Being the first quarter, there wasn't a whole lot of revenue activity, so at that time we did not have any changes in our projections. We just gave you a financial update. Expenses and revenues appeared at that time to be tracking according to what we had on budget. We did take action at that time to eliminate 21 of the unfunded positions from the budget to present to us salary savings. And then in May of 2012, we did do a mid-year budget review. At that time, we had projected our operating deficit at the end of the year to be $3.7 million based on the information we had at that time. We had provided some suggestions, recommendations to how to close the gap, and we came to the City Council seeking guidance as we wanted to begin formulating our fiscal 2012-13 general fund budget. At the fiscal 2011-12 year-end estimate, our general fund budget projections, what we had projected at mid-year, at that time, we had projected our revenues to be slightly down or at about $76 million. That's below what we initially budgeted at that time based on what we knew. We saw some revenues that were tracking below what we had originally projected. In particular, some of our UUT on our telecom industry. We had some super graphics that we didn't were tracking below what was originally budgeted. Our expenditures at the mid-year, at that time, we anticipated them to be slightly higher. I do want to make a note that we did make a note that we assumed that all of our M&O costs at that time would be expended. So at that time, we anticipated a shortfall of 3.7. Where we are today and projecting at our third quarter review. We anticipate our revenues to be slightly higher than what we anticipated at mid-year, but they're still below what our original budget was. Our budget was 77.5. And that number that I'm showing you, $76.3 million, is because we have seen some additional revenues in our property taxes, but we still are seeing our UUT taxes and some of our super graphics and other revenues slightly below our budget. Our projected expenditures at June 30 are slightly below what we anticipated, projected, and so at this time we're anticipating our shortfall to be $2.5 million. To highlight some of the developments that we have become aware of since we did our mid-year budget review, we have seen additional property tax revenues that came in May and July. Primarily, what we learned is that money is property tax revenue we did not budget for. It's part of the pension override that was redirected to the city as a result of the redevelopment agency being abolished. The approved waste hauler contract that was signed on June 5th, the $5 million upfront one-time franchise fee money, it has come in this week. The contract was signed and approved. We did receive that money this week. And I would want to mention again, as it had been discussed, those monies would go, we anticipate those monies to go straight into our reserves, so that at the end of the fiscal year, we would only use what we would need to close the gap for fiscal year. The bond refinancing that was approved on June 29th, I'd like to congratulate the mayor and the city council. The finance team closed the deal this morning. It met all the parameters that the council had approved. The council had requested at a minimum a 3% present value savings. We actually achieved more than 4%. That in itself is saving the city. First of all, as Councilman Franklin had mentioned, we have over $10 million now that we could do our safety improvements for the Civic Center, and Public Works is very busy. And in addition, our August debt service payment, we were able to, because we were able to close the transaction this morning, we're able to provide the general fund with some relief and not having to make the August payment. Those are good things, but I also want to remind everybody that in looking and tracking at some of our claim expenses, we do anticipate, based on what we've looked at and tracked as far as details of claim settlement, our legal liabilities, that we are anticipating that it's very likely that we will have an additional funding need to get us through the end of this fiscal year, and a lot of that is because of some of the unforeseen legal claims that have been settled in the current fiscal year that we did not anticipate would be settled in this year. And I want to mention again, there are some additional revenue shortfalls. These are shortfalls from the budget. We're currently about tracking $500,000 below on our super graphic, those billboard advertisements, and also we're about $675,000 below tracking on our budget for parking and vehicle code fines. The general fund revenue table that I'm showing you, it's just kind of giving you a breakdown on the types of revenues. As you can see, our utility users tax, as I mentioned, is slightly below. It's not quite at 75%. Our property taxes, we're tracking above. Our sales tax for the last 3 years has seen some slow growth. It's been positive, and the trends, we've continued to track above the county, and our sales tax revenues are recovering, but it's at a much slower pace. Our state collected taxes, that's the motor vehicle in lieu, we are right on track with our budget there. And some of the other local tax revenues is slightly below. And those would be where you would find our pari-mutuels, those are tracking above. Our pari-mutuels are transit occupancy tax, our business license, and our card clubs. It's our other revenues that are slightly below, and that's where you will find that we are below on our the parking vehicle code fines, the permitting fees, and the red light cameras. Our general fund expenditures, it's showing you by department, and overall we're still below our 75%, so we are tracking below our anticipated, our projected expenses. So our expenses, we are below 75% at the June 30, 3/4 of the year. To give you some highlights or a status update on where we are in our special funds, just to provide you how we're tracking our special revenues. They appear to be tracking below 75%, but I want to remind you that the special revenues are things like gas tax, Prop A, Prop C. Those monies are deferred until we can spend the money and recognize the revenue. So those are directly correlated to our expenditure side, as you'll see that they are also below, way below our projected budgets. Proprietary funds, that's where you have our water and our sewer funds. You did approve a water rate increase. We're starting to see those revenues come in slightly. Our redevelopment, that looks really out of line, but primarily the revenues that are projecting at June 30th, that's attributed to the transfers in and the transfers out. And those, the increase that you see there is the two most significant are related to the MSG transfer and the Hollywood Park, $3.9 million that was transferred for those transactions. The debt service, again, you can see it's slightly below. Now we are not going to record our August payment because we won't make it, so you can see that those revenues to the debt service fund are down, and that directly correlates to the expense side. The special revenue expenditures, as I mentioned, the special revenue expenditures are down. A lot of that is due to capital delays in some of the capital projects. The proprietary funds, those are below the expenditures. I just want to remind you, some of the capital projects for the water and sewer fund, they were delayed at the time until it was known what was going to happen with our water rates. So now it takes them a little time to ramp up and get do what they need to do for whether there's contracts that need to be let out. So they're slightly below on the expenditure side. The redevelopment, it matches with the expenditures as far as what's going out, again, related to MSG and Hollywood Park. And our debt service is below. Like I said, we won't have our $1.5 million debt payment in there. And then I think we might have some other expenditures. I'm sorry, it's the other debt payments that we have not booked, like our pension obligation bonds. In conclusion, I just want to highlight there are some things in this whole overall presentation. There's a lot of things that the city has done to tighten their belts, and we're monitoring and tracking our revenues much closer, but we still have some big issues that are ahead of us. One of them is our OPEB, which is our other post-employee benefits liabilities. We have unfunded liabilities. Currently, the annual cost of our other pension, other post-employment benefits of about $17 million this year. We anticipate that number alone will increase by 9% per year. And that number currently represents about 21% of our general fund expenses. We anticipate, and I think you can verify this with the five-year management report, that in 5 years, it's expected that this number that grows by 9% per year will represent approximately 27% of our general fund expenditures. And so at the present time, I think staff and the management is continuing to look for options that will help mitigate some of these increasing costs, because I think what it's showing is those costs are increasing and they're outpacing how fast we can generate new revenues. Other unfunded liabilities is a reminder that we have already carved into our designated reserves. They are very low. We do need to rebuild our reserves, and the reserves that we currently have are for our general liability, our workers' compensation, vacation and sick leave, and the city currently has no undesignated reserves, as you will recall in 2 years when we went through and ran through over $30 million. So currently the city is operating within and using what designated reserves they have. And these reserves I've identified here are below what you previously had held. that completes my presentation. If you have any questions.
Certainly. Councilman Stevens.
Yes, I have a question. Reference
sir.
to the 27%
Mm-hmm.
within 5 years unfunded obligation.
Mm-hmm.
If you could just, for the public as well as myself, the $5 million from our waste hauling contract, which is placed into a special as part of our reserves. Do you anticipate that what's going to happen is that we will have to draw up on our reserves in say 2, 3, 4 years down the road?
The $5 million that we're getting from the for the upfront waste hauler, I think we had mentioned before, it would go straight into reserves, and the current year we would use what we need to, and right now it's projected to be about $2.5 million to close the gap for this year. I think going forward, as we're budgeting for the fiscal 12-13 budget, I think there's been discussion, and I thought it was very clear that we were not going to try to use any, as much as we can prevent using one-time revenues, we are not going to budget to use them. I think looking at the reserves that we have, we're fortunate that we can use some of those monies to glide into making it through some of the hard years, but I think as we go out and looking out 5 years, I think we're continuing to look at ways to mitigate those increasing costs, because it's clear that they're outpacing the growth of our revenues.
So what do you think we need to do? What is your opinion? What do you see needs to change?
I think what we're doing right now, as far as the management team, of looking at ways to, when we, first of all, we are working on our budget, and we have a status quo budget. We also have budget options where every department was required to provide a 10% budget reduction. I think, and looking at how all the pieces come together, I think this is where the city manager with the management staff are looking at what do we need to do. We've recently had some discussions on what are some of the things that we could do to consider to mitigate some of the increasing costs. Those costs are increasing. They're far outpacing how our revenues that we can generate, any new revenues.
And the 27% is represented unfunded liability. Just specifically, what is that, so the public will know?
It's referring to our other post-employee benefits, and that comes, and it was verified straight from our 5-year management report. Our 5-year management report anticipated, and I want to clarify this, anticipated that in 5 years our general fund expenses would probably be around the order of $90 million. That's a projection. 27% of that is what we anticipate the annual cost for our other post-employee benefit numbers will be. And the point that we were trying to make was to show and clarify that we're not out of the woods. We have a lot of work ahead of us. We've dealt with the things we could immediately, but we continue to look at things that we could do so we could become financially stable.
So what I would like to ask colleagues is that I would like to make a suggestion to Mr. Fields. Mr. Fields, we currently are leasing our parking enforcement vehicles, correct? I would like to see that rather than but rather than purchase new vehicles, we simply keep the old ones. And if we could possibly find out what the dollar savings would be for that. Our parking enforcement vehicles, many of them are CNG vehicles. They're in solid shape, in my opinion. I would like for you to take a look and see just whether or not not whether or not, but that we would simply keep those and save that. I've roughly calculated it's about a little over $500,000. And so if we could take a look at those vehicles right there, just keep those in our fleet and not purchase new ones. Now, on another note, I'd like to ask this question with 53 seconds left. If we were to, our executive staff, if we were to have those individuals, let's just say our executive staff at the very top, if they were all to become, Ms. Koike, if they were all to become, say, contract employees, how much of a benefit savings would we have in reference to health care? Do you have a rough idea?
I don't have an idea right now.
I can tell you that the costs would not change whether or not they're contract or not, because in most cases, like I'm a contract employee. I get the same benefits that.
Well, so I'm talking about those just beneath you, if that was to change.
Right.
I'm just asking a question. I'm just asking.
Everything staying the same, those benefits would be equal to those of other employees in the city. There would not be any change in a reduction in cost that I would see as a result of changing the executive staff to at-will employees.
Okay, well, I think the lower level employees should not be contract, but I have a question as far as, seems our problem with our budget, it seems to be a management problem, in my opinion. Just my opinion. I feel we have a management problem. And one of the things about civil services is that when you have an employee, of course, as we all know, that is not performing at the level that we need, they have what's called bumping rights. So then they're able to drop back to their previous position, and then we may have to let go someone who actually is a good employee. And so I was just curious because, as I stated, in hearing Ms. Koike, and you're doing a fine job, Ms. Koike. I'm referring to you, but other departments. I just want to know. I just want to see just exactly what would the savings be. But please research that issue in reference to the leasing of those parking enforcement vehicles. Thank you.
Councilwoman Dunlap.
Well, actually, Mayor, I would like to, I've not sought recognition, so my colleagues can speak, and then I may seek recognition under our rules of decorum. It states very clearly, Mr. Mayor, since you said you were going to try to force me to speak after Councilman Stevens, that's not the way it works in parliamentary procedure. Members of the body seek recognition from the chair. Under our municipal code section 2-263.2, Mayor, it says, the members of the city council desiring to speak shall first address the chair, gain recognition by the presiding officer, and then shall continue. So I would like that respect, if you would, Mayor, to allow me to seek recognition from the chair to speak on this matter. Thank you.
I have a feeling that you will. Councilman Rouse?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to wait too.
Great. Councilman Franklin?
Well, let me throw my 2 cents. You gave us a positive outlook, but yet, as you've indicated, we're not out of the woods. And I must say that it's critical to City Manager that now is the time that we need to garner our staff and place and employees to put them on notice that we're in this bed together, and that the way that we can get out of this matter is do the meet and confers and bring some serious issues to the table that will stop this bleeding of our general fund. And so I clearly understand that we are a business, and because we are a business, we have to operate accordingly, providing a public service, and also provide a positive working environment for our employees as well as our contractors. So I will be working due diligently with my colleagues and you, Mr. City Manager, and the other staff members to make sure that we find a positive resolution for the benefit of our taxpayers to make sure that we stay solvent. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Anyone want to seek recognition?
Yes, I do.
Oh, Councilwoman Dunlap.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. In your PowerPoint, Ms. Quickie, you said the elimination of 21 unfunded positions saved us money. If they were unfunded, how did they save us money? As brief as you can, please.
They were eliminated, and I think the anticipation was in going forward with a status quo that we would not look to fill them.
No, but we were never going to fill them.
They were there, but if they're there, they're still authorized positions.
Okay, well, actually, it says here in the report on your PowerPoint that they're unfunded. So I'm saying when members of the public look at a PowerPoint that says they're unfunded, then to eliminate an unfunded position, to me, would be a zero savings. I'm just saying it's incongruent with regard to the language being used. If they're not funded, there's no savings. I'm just saying it doesn't look as if there was any savings there, because we did not have any layoffs during this past year. It was the year before, with regard to actually losing positions. Do you have you mentioned here in your PowerPoint with regard to unanticipated additional funding needs, unforeseen legal claims. I think that's, actually I wrote it down, Fund 9936.
Yes.
Do you have that under consideration with regard to the shortfall?
Actually, that was the issue that I was addressing there, and looking at some of the details in tracking how expenditures for the current year and discussing that with legal. I wanted to bring that forward. It has not happened yet, but we anticipate between now and the end of the fiscal year that
Well,
there
that's what I
probably would
want to
be.
know. It's over $2 million. Is it included in your when you estimate the deficit for the end of the year? Is that figure a roundabout? It may be an estimate somewhat, but it's close to $2 million.
You're asking, did we anticipate? And the answer is no.
Okay, so it's possible at the end of the year there could be an additional $2 million.
Yes.
I think that's critical, and I don't think that's really been understood by everyone, that you show a deficit, structural deficit, that you think, based on your staff report, can be filled using $2.5 million of the one-time waste hauler franchise fee to fill up the $2.5 million. However, we could have not a $2.5 million structural deficit, but a $4 or $5 million structural deficit based on unforeseen legal costs and some other matters.
And that's correct. And thank you for correcting Ms. Dunlap. That was, and the reason I put that in there was because that was something that came forward very recently as far as.
Well, I appreciate at least the reference of it, because it did kind of clue me to speak to it. So I do
Yes.
appreciate that very much. But it's a much more serious issue for us, I think, than the public and maybe this body understands. It's not a $2.5 million shortfall. It's potentially 4 or 5 or possibly even more, which we don't have the funds for. So I'm very concerned about that. I do appreciate Ms. Quakey referencing the management partners who gave us a 5-year projection. I would have liked actually more of their information in the PowerPoint. It was just a couple months ago, I believe, that management partners gave us a very in-depth analysis of not only the current situation, but the future for 5 years.
Yes.
It was very informative, and I, for one, very much appreciated that information. I would like to see a little more of it here, because I think I would have found that helpful. But thank you for at least referencing that. Ms. Quakey, do you happen to have a copy of our financial policies, like they're with you?
No, I don't.
The dais. Do we have, well, I don't even have to ask you, I'll just make the statement. I know very clearly that the number of financial policies we have, one is we are not to use one-time money to fill a structural deficit. That's what our financial policy says. I, for one, am very concerned that now we have this money, the $5 million advance on the franchise fees for the waste, from the waste hauler, and we're not using it to fill up some of our reserves. We have no money in reserves. I think you heard it was stated that in the last 2 years, we've spent $30 million of our reserve money. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what that means is that's money we're never supposed to be spending for ongoing operations of municipal government. It's reserves. Some of it's employee money. They're sick and vacation money. If all of our employees wanted to go on a vacation at the same time we were sick, we wouldn't be able to cash them out. This is really, a lot of that's their money. I, for one, am very bothered. I did not support the budget last year because I do not believe we should have attempted to fill in a structural deficit with one-time money, $30 million in 2 years. It's abhorrent to me. Very, very poor public policy, and it's against the adopted financial policies of this city government. And now we're about to do it again with half of the money from the franchise fee. That we shouldn't be using any of that money. We should have been working this past year to balance our budget. A structural deficit needs to be fixed. This is not, it was never at the end of this year an $855,000 that we cleared up the structural deficit except for $855,000. That was never true. Structural deficit means the ongoing revenues no longer can pay for the ongoing expenditures. And we did not fix that problem. We have not fixed it. And we're just going to get deeper and deeper into trouble, Mr. Fields, until we start seriously addressing this issue before us. Using this one-time money is contrary, I'm just going to say it's a violation of our financial policies. We should not be doing it. I wish this council would not do it, because I'm concerned we have all these cities around us going bankrupt. We can't always, the fact that we got this $5 million, this is a good thing. Let's put it in the bank where it belongs to fill up our reserves, since we've depleted $30 million. We shouldn't be spending it again. It's like taking money that should be used for your house payment and going to Disneyland. No, we need to be putting this money where it belongs and taking care of our financial obligations with ongoing revenues. And if we don't have the ongoing revenues, then we need to decrease the ongoing expenditures. We've known it for 3 years, year after year after year. This body, even though the faces changed, they've been using one-time revenues. We should not be doing it. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Morales.
Thank you. And a lot of what you've heard here is absolutely true in terms of what the numbers say and what, for instance, on the one-time revenue, nobody up here wants to do that, okay? It's absolutely right. You should not be using it one-time money to pay something that's reoccurring. We don't want to do that. It only happens when that's a necessary step we need to take. Now, what steps have been taken? Well, the audit before this actual report stated that, we were $17 million down, and now we're less than $3 million down. Okay, if that's not a drastic change over 1 year period, then you're not going to see what a drastic change is. The cities that are going through the bankruptcies, they didn't make those drastic changes that we made in the last 2 years. A lot of the pain was dealt with from our employees, from our services. There was deep cuts. And I have to tell you that the $5 million, it's not like it just came in and we decided, now we can use it. No, we understood that we couldn't cut $17 million down and move forward. We knew that we would still have some form of deficit that we would have to deal with, and that's how we structured our contract with waste and various other items. There's a $1.5 million debt saving because of the moves that this council made. We don't have to make a $1.5 million payment, I believe, today, right? No, tomorrow. It would have been tomorrow. We don't have to make it. So that is actually steps that we took to help resolve the deficit. So while it still looks like it's very dark, and it is, we are beginning to see the light. As difficult as it is to see, and we can sit here and we can point at all of our issues, which we have, but we have also begun to strategize the steps that we're going to take for more difficult decisions. And I really hope that the same council that's up here today that's saying we're ready to make those tough decisions is ready to make them on those days, because I've seen less. I've seen less than those make those decisions, and they haven't been easy, and they're coming, So while we have a long way to go, it would be unfair to categorize the situation and the steps that this council and staff, I really appreciate it, and our auditor and everybody else, and especially our employees who took the hit to help us with this. It would be unfair to say that nobody took the steps to start improving this problem. That would be unfair, and it would actually be just a slap in the face to our employees. So once again, we have a long way to go. We've made significant steps, but that's your snapshot right there. Thank you.
Ms. Quakey, I'm going to ask you this again about perspective. Now, the way I calculated, those audits covered over 300,000, maybe 300,000 or more transactions, 27 of them. That was like 9/100,000ths of 1% where they found we did something wrong. But that doesn't mean the decisions we made over the last 10 years or 4 years have been good decisions, does it? As far as it means how we spend our money. It means that they really couldn't find money missing, but they don't make any judgment on the quality of our decisions. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And so this is what I'm going to tell you people. This train didn't start down the tracks last year before. This train started on the tracks when the decision was made to authorize lifetime medical benefits for every employee and a dependent when they left. That's when it started there. It started when we decided eons ago, like all cities did, to have uncapped sick and vacation leave accrual, so that, and it's not for employees that are on the job, Councilwoman, that we have to have those banks. It's for when people leave and we owe them their separation payments. That's the liability that we have. Decisions like that were great when stock markets were flush, when property values were high, meaning property taxes coming to the city were high. There's more money in the economy so people can borrow against their homes and buy things, so more sales taxes, and cities were flush. It was the council's responsibility to see when trends were changing to change their spending policies, all right? When I came into office, we had a $17.6 million deficit. We were scheduled to run out of money about by June, and I came in office in February. We didn't run out of money that year. We did a lot. We're 144 positions lighter than we were a few years ago. We have tried to make some wise decisions related to bond refinancing to eliminate a $1.5 million payment. Now, I love tough talk as much as anybody, but let me tell you what $2.5 million is. That's 25 policemen or 40 regular employees. If we don't plug that now we're like fighting oil derrick fires at this point to make sure that we work our way towards a sensible size of city government but maintain the services that we can while we try to attract revenue and businesses to our city as we are being successful in doing, and we have everything come together so that finally we stop the bleeding. But to say that we have the luxury to just say, we're not going to use, dogmatically say we'll never use one-time money. Well, actually, you do use one-time money to balance budgets. It's called a contingency fund in every other city. But their contingency funds are a lot bigger, like ours used to be, $30 million. That's when you smooth out the fluctuations in the economy, but you keep a reserve. We didn't do that here. So now we're trying to make it. So if we're not going to spend this $2.5 million to balance the budget, then all we have to do is figure out what 40 city employees we're going to get rid of or what 25 policemen we're going to get rid of. I don't think that's wise. I don't think that's prudent. I think we need a more measured approach. I think we need to gradually right-size the city as we maintain services and try to work toward the future to grow our revenues. I think that's sensible. So I'm going to say again, boy, we sure made a lot of boneheaded decisions in the past, but that doesn't help us to cry about it now. And it doesn't help us to make big talk about how tough we need to be. It means being deliberate, measured, and thoughtful and contemplative about how we move forward in the future. And I think that's what's most important. And with that, we're going to receive and file the report. DR4.
Staff report recommending approval of an agreement with communication support.
Actually, Mayor, I would like us to vote on the receive and file, please.
I move approval, Mayor.
Second.
Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Steve.
One comment. I would appreciate it if, added to this report that we have before us this evening, if we could put a copy of the management report along with this so it's kept together in the file. I would appreciate it.
Madam City Clerk.
Can we do that, Mayor?
I'm sure we can.
So do we need to make a motion?
Then I move that we add the management partners audit to be with this.
Oh, that isn't part of this.
No, I want it as an accompanying document, so people who pull this, they can get a better picture because it's referenced, but it's not here. I'm just asking that it be a document attached in the file as part of this evening's meeting.
Yeah.
I second that.
Yeah, right.
So just an amendment to the motion, Mayor?
No, not the original motion. We're voting separate, if you don't mind.
Right. Okay, we'll vote separately. Your motion.
Wait, clarification. So
I would just like to amend the motion. You have a receive and file?
He's not accepting the amendment, so.
No, just vote to put it on.
Well, he can vote no. I just want to include it so people can have access to it.
I don't mind including it, but we first have to vote for yours to add it on, and then I'll make an additional motion to include it on. Right?
No, the amendment is to just include it so we can.
But he's saying that's not his motion. So we'll vote on your motion.
No, his motion, well, there is no motion. It's receive and file. Normally would not require a motion.
Exactly, it would, but you asked for one.
You
Correct.
asked for one.
And so I'm adding an amendment.
I'll tell you what, I will recuse my motion. You make a totally new one, include whatever you want, and we'll
Because
go with
ordinarily
that.
we just receive and file.
Okay, let's do that.
All right, well then I would move that we receive and file this document, and as an accompanying document for the file, the management partners audit.
I second that.
Madam City Clerk.
Council members Stevens.
Aye.
Dunlap.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye.
Thank you.
DR4.
Staff report recommending approval of an agreement with Communication Support Group, Inc. to perform an audit of cable, franchise, and public education and governmental access support fees.
Move approval.
Second.
Comment.
Comment.
Is there going to be a staff report?
There could be.
Ms. Quickie.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. In November of 2011, the city entered into an agreement with Communications Support Group to perform an audit or review of the franchise fees and PEG fees for Time Warner and AT&T. A total of $63,387 were approved for these services. The termination date of the agreement was July 1, 2012. However, due to delays outside of the city and the consultant's control, the audit has not yet been completed. $33,056 of the original contract amount still remain unspent as of June 30, 2012. City staff is requesting to continue the services of Communications Support Group to complete these reviews for an amount not to exceed $42,056. This amount is comprised of the balance of $33,056 plus an additional $9,000 for additional services added to the scope of work. The termination date of this new proposed contract will be December 31, 2012. Funds for the unspent balance of the contract are still encumbered, and there are sufficient funds to cover the additional $9,000. And I just want to make a comment that it is very likely that the city will recover the funds expended on this audit as a result of the audit findings.
Thank you. Any council comment before we vote?
Yes, I just like to ask clarification on that, Ms. Koike.
Yes.
When you say that we're going to recover it, we have presently outstanding in reference to fees that are owed to us by Comcast as well as also Time Warner?
This particular issue is an audit of AT&T and Time Warner.
But they wish to collect the money for us that is owed to us, correct?
No, what they are doing is AT&T and Time Warner are required to submit to us taxes on franchise fees. What this does is this company is now going into the books of Time Warner and AT&T to actually audit the books to see that what they were supposed to submit to us has been submitted.
Okay, now hold that thought right there.
Go ahead.
The reason why we're hiring them is because currently they owe the city money, correct?
And
what is that dollar figure that we estimate?
They are paying us utility users tax, and they've begun paying us our franchise fees. They have begun doing that. We go on the premise that they submit to us a remittance of how they're calculating a number, a percentage based on a certain number, and they're remitting a fee to us. What we don't know is, are they including everything that we're entitled to? Are they including all the revenues that we're entitled to capture our franchise fee and our PEG fees on, which is why this company is going in to look at the books, to look at the definitions of how they're recording their revenues, and to follow it through to make sure that the city is receiving what we're entitled to receive.
So you do not have an idea of how much is owed to us unless we hire an outside auditing firm to go into Time Warner to find out for us.
That's correct.
Really?
Yes.
We do not have any. I'm going to say. Let me say this again. You're telling this body that the city of Inglewood, we have a franchise agreement with an entity, and we do not have any type of method where in-house staff is able to monitor what amount of money is due us.
We are able to monitor
without having to go and pay someone else $42,000 to go and retrieve the funding for us?
Yes, we're able to monitor what we receive. We are taking their word that they are abiding by the contract that's in place. What this service is for, asking an auditor to go in and look at their books to see that what they are submitting to us is in fact what's due to the city.
In past years, how much do we estimate as owed to us for past years?
We have not had this audit conducted on our franchise fees and PEG fees in the past.
Well, then where does the rumor come that the city is owed over $100,000 by Time Warner or Comcast? Where does that come from?
There was a history prior to Time Warner that there was an audit conducted for Comcast. That's an old issue.
Did they pay that money?
No, they did not.
Are they going to assist us to obtain that money?
I do not believe they can. I think there are other legal issues that are involved.
Why did we not go after that money then?
That was a few years before I came to the city.
What have they told you? Why?
The situation is that the city did identify that they owed us some money. At this point, Comcast has determined that they're not interested in giving us some money, and right now the legal department is helping us deal with.
So Comcast they owed us over $100,000, and they tell us, well, we don't really owe you, and we just simply say, oh, okay.
No, we didn't just simply say it. The
city
attorney's office.
I'm sure we didn't, but Mr. City Attorney, why did we not go after our $100,000 plus dollars? Can you tell me, sir? Mr. City Attorney, can you tell me? Outside of this meeting. Very well. All right. You tell me. You can tell me. Ms. Quakey.
Yes.
Here's my issue. If they owe us, okay, if the money is lost, the $100,000 plus dollars is lost, for whatever the reasons are, is lost, then, and you have no idea of how much we may be able to obtain in fees, then how can we possibly justify spending $42,000 is a positive for us to even pursue the money that they owe us currently that we can collect, if we do not even have an idea of what is owed us? Meaning this, if you were to tell me, you say, well, Councilman, I think they owe us $100,000 right now. And then you say, okay, then we're going to spend $42,000 in order to validate it so that we know what to charge them, then I can rationalize that. I can justify it. But if you're just telling me, well, we're going to spend $42,000 and these people are going to go in to just conduct similar to an audit to determine what they owe us, my time is up. I have an issue with that. So maybe you can clarify it. Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, we wouldn't want you to talk about anything that would be closed session, possible litigation. Mr. City Attorney, is this like litigation type information?
Well, one of the questions was, but I think the real answer has to do with the fact that without access to Time Warner's books, how do we know what their income is? And without knowing what their income is, how can we find out what fees are owed to us? That's why you conduct an audit. You don't necessarily rely on the company's word that they're disclosing to you all the information that is relevant to find out what is owed to you. So that's why you have audits.
But wouldn't it be better if we structured our contract so that they had to provide us with their documentation of the way that they assess their charges, and then we wouldn't be in this situation? Maybe our original agreement should be structured that way. Well, that's a question for later.
No, sir, that's the direction I was going. Okay, very good.
Right. Okay.
I agree.
All right.
I have a comment.
Councilman Dunlap.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to read some information which is on a public document as a staff report, so there's nothing confidential with regard to closed session. And actually, with regard to the audit that they performed in 2007, they determined that $61,000 was owed to us by Time Warner, and $223,000 was owed to us by Comcast. The city failed to ask them for the money once we determined what they owed us, so it's completely upon our shoulders. The city government never asked them. And now there may be a statute of limitations, is probably they don't have to pay. But that's not for me to determine. But we don't have the money, and they don't plan on giving it to us. Now, with regard to this item before us, it says that the contractor is going to perform a 3-year audit of the franchise fees, PEG fees, and video users tax paid by Time Warner, and a 1 year of AT&T. And I asked Mr. Fields prior to the meeting what was a video users tax. So could you explain it very quickly, please, on my time? Because I still don't know what it is. Video users taxes.
Yeah, that's my staff, and I think Sharon has the answer.
The video users tax is related to the cable franchise. That would be the equipment. For instance, if you have service in your home for like the DVR, which is the recording box, that's what it's referring to. Because I specifically asked that question also of the consultant, and he said, yes, that's considered part of the cable franchise.
Well, then why aren't we doing an audit of their utility taxes? Because that's not even on here. That's the biggest one. I mean, that's not. I'm just saying, that's not even listed here. The utility taxes is a major area for us to be looking into, because that's based on their gross revenue, I believe, gross sales, and it's huge. Time Warner, it's huge in the city. So I'm saying that I personally believe, Ms. Quakey and Mr. Fields, that this agreement needs to be rewritten and brought back to us. Once again, the video users taxes is only a small piece. The utility taxes is a huge piece. It's not even on here. And something else that I find a bit surprising, we're going to pay someone to audit our PEG fees. P is for public, E is for education, G is for government. PEG fees. Under DIVCA, which is state law, which, by the way, the state now, we don't have an agreement with these companies. The state, these agreements with this, we don't have agreements with them. So it's not like, it'd be nice if we could write things in, and we could have 15 years ago, but we don't have that luxury any longer. It's governed by the all state.
That's correct.
PEG fees don't exist. We don't have any. They're zero. So why are they auditing something that doesn't exist? That's like going into a city, having the audit company that's here before us, and auditing a redevelopment agency when no redevelopment agency exists. You're going to pay somebody to audit something that doesn't exist? PEG fees. This is based on, we would have been able, I've tried to get us to earn the PEG fees for a number of years, but to earn that 1% of gross, which is huge, a lot of money could have been generated to this city revenue, we had to produce 56 hours of programming a week. I've spoken about this many times. And get our own channel and our own head-in. This city would not support our own head-in, which is the call of this council would have to make that decision. If we would have had our own head-in, then we could have produced 56 hours of programming. Then we would have been eligible for the 1% PEG, which is a lot of revenue. We're always looking for revenue. Well, apparently we don't look far enough. I've mentioned it many times. It's been spoken to us by members of the public at the podium. We've just ignored it. It's money out there waiting for us, and we turned our back on it. So we certainly don't need to have an audit of money that doesn't exist. We've never qualified under DIVCA, Mr. Fields. We have never qualified. So we don't need to pay somebody to audit money that doesn't exist. I would ask, please, and my colleagues, if you consider having this agreement amended somewhat. They shouldn't be auditing PEG. Like I say, it doesn't exist. Too bad, because it's a lot of money could have been generated to the general fund. And video users taxes is only a portion. The utility taxes should be on here. If they're going to do work for us, I want utility taxes and the franchise fees. Those are the two main sources of revenue. And this time, I hope that whatever the findings are, we actually go to those companies and say, pay us the money you owe us, as opposed to putting on a desk someplace and forgetting about it. Now, other people can be defensive of city staff making mistakes. I think if you don't recognize the problem face on, you can't correct it. You can't correct it. We have to look at the issues before us. That's what's not working, what hasn't worked, who's not doing the job, and get these problems corrected. That's all. The public deserves it. My constituents deserve it. And I would ask my colleagues to seriously consider having this agreement modified slightly, bring it back in 2 weeks to have them do the work for us, to generate some extra revenue that's owed to us. Thank you.
Councilman Morales.
Mayor, can I address
Mr.
a few
Fields.
of our items?
Go ahead.
We are auditing the UUT tax through another auditing firm, so we will be addressing that issue. We are receiving, through the state franchise, we do get the 1% PEG money, so we are getting that, so I think it's worth pursuing. And thirdly, those PEG monies cannot be used for operational expenses or for the general fund to help our shortfall. They have to be used specifically for capital expenses associated with our cable broadcasting.
Mayor, if I make a quick comment, if we audit PEG, since we don't have it, we've never qualified, Mr. Fields, you might find that we have to refund that money because we don't qualify for it. So if we've been receiving it and it's not authorized, we may have to write them a big check. So just be cautious.
Okay.
That may be a good reason to include it in the audit, Mr. Fields, so that we find that out. That was my question, actually. I was just going to ask him one simple question: have we received any PEG money? And if so, that would be a good moment to go through the audit. If in fact there's an issue with it, I'm sure you'll resolve it. As a matter of fact, could you come back? Once we go through this item tonight, could you come back with the answer on that, since it has been brought up in terms of, are we receiving something that's due us through PEG or not? quite simply. But you answered my question as to are we receiving any amount at all?
Okay. Councilman Frank.
And just reconfirming, Mr. City Manager, that the issues regarding the user utility tax, that there is an auditing firm that verifies that. Okay, so what we simply need now just to move forward on the proposal for regarding the franchise fees, and then also you're going to verify legally where we stand regarding the 1%, that 1% we're getting. Okay, Mayor,
Well, actually, Mayor, if I may, don't we have people here who work on our cable? Who is it in your office, Mr. Fields? Maybe they could address how we qualify for the PEG. I think that'd be very informative for the public. Who do we have here that deals with our cable, Mr. Fields, could speak to how we qualify for PEG, the 1%? Isn't that the Deputy City Manager?
Well, look.
Is he here? Maybe he could respond.
Yeah, we
Thank
could
you.
have Daryl come out. I mean,
Thank you.
that's where I got the information from. You know, he did the research for me.
All right. Well, now we'll move forward and take my time. Thank you. The question I have is, one, it was my understanding we were going to audit UUT under a separate cover. Is that correct? I just wanted to confirm that.
Yes, we have a different company
Okay.
that monitors our UUT.
Secondly, the franchise fees is probably the bulk of what we're talking about, because we want to know how many subscribers they have that have different types of services, and are we getting our share?
Yes.
And the biggest issue is that we don't have any way of knowing what their subscription rules are and proprietary information the company has, which I guess they wouldn't want to put out in the public because it's valuable to their competitors. So that's probably why they hold it closely.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's
And
correct.
so what vehicle do we have to force them to allow us to let outsiders come in and open their books?
Part of what they have requested us to do is to agree to signing a non-disclosure agreement.
Okay. And so that's why this is the way it is, so that everyone understands this isn't like a bunch of dunderhead city people let people
No.
do this. They basically hold this information because it's proprietary information for their business.
Yes,
and,
it is.
And they have to have special agreements from us that we won't disclose it.
That's
Okay?
correct.
All right. And that was all I had, and we do receive PEG money.
We started receiving PEG money. Yes, that's correct.
All right.
If I may,
No, you may not.
I just want to make sure that...
Not just yet.
Okay.
I'll handle it. Mr. Brown, you know, we're already over on this item, and so basically the basic question is, do we receive PEG money, and how do we qualify for it?
Yes, we do.
And when we're not going to have a bunch of questions afterward.
No,
Go
just-
ahead.
Yeah, under DIVCA, how does any city
Okay.
qualify?
You have to have a PEG-related channel, first of all, and you have to have a certain minimum amount of programming,
And what is that?
56 hours.
Do we have
a week.
56 hours?
Yes, we do.
Well, we have...
Folks, please.
This is in terms of
That's not really polite,
the
is it?
reader board. We have various programming, like the council.
Actually,
we have
Mayor, if I may...
No, you may. No,
First off,
you-
we
no,
have
no.
we have a
Miss
resolution that
Dunlap,
prohibits
Miss Dunlap,
PE.
Miss Dunlap, Miss
Don't we,
Dunlap.
Mr. Brown?
Miss
No, we don't.
Dunlap.
We didn't pass a resolution? I'm
Miss
just asking
Dunlap,
for
I know,
point of
but why don't you, like everyone else does,
all right, thank you.
recognition from the chair, and we'll move on. But it's not
Thank
like
you.
it's not a dialogue. Okay, so anyway, Mr. Brown, so that we don't spend all night on this, basically, in a nutshell, we do qualify for the PEG money. We do have the requisite amount of program that occurs every week,
Yes, we
and
do.
that's how we receive it, and that's how we're qualified.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
You're welcome.
That's it.
There's a
Okay.
motion on the floor, Mayor.
Madam City Clerk.
So we don't have I don't have a motion.
I believe I motioned it, but I'll do it again.
And I second it.
To move
Thank
approval.
you.
it's a-
Councilmember Stevens.
And Madam City Clerk, the item itself, can you read that?
It's just approving, I'm sorry.
We're approving?
The agreement for $42,056.
Before we take the vote, though, Ms. Quakey, your belief is that you don't believe the findings will eclipse the cost of the audit. Is that what you said?
That they will cover.
That's what you're saying. You don't believe we'll receive enough in return to even cover the cost of the audit?
No, I believe we will.
Oh, you believe we will. Okay,
Find,
great.
we will have sufficient funds to cover those
All right.
findings.
Madam City Clerk, please.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Dunlap.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye. DR 5 and H 5.
And we call to order the Housing Authority.
So moved.
A quorum is
You
present.
guys are making too much noise right now.
Staff report recommending adoption of a resolution approving the cost allocation plan for the Inglewood Housing Authority and the Housing Division as a part of the division internal control policies and city standard operating procedures.
Move adoption.
Second.
Madam, is there a staff report or is there any questions? First I'll ask there any questions. You have a question, Councilman Stevens?
Yeah, I'd just like to get an overview.
Sure. The Department of Housing and Urban Development requires that the City of Inglewood and the Inglewood Housing Authority update its cost allocation plan. A cost allocation plan is a method of allocating indirect costs to respective programs and projects. For any program that receives federal funding, a method or rate of allocating these costs must meet the standards as defined by the Office of Management and Budget. The city currently does not have an updated method that meets these standards and meets these criteria, and it is noted as one of our audit findings in both the city's audit and as well as the single audit and the audit from HUD. In order to address the compliance issue, the city engaged the services of MGT America to update the city's cost allocation plan that will enable the city to allocate costs appropriately. The allocation method that we now have meets the OMB standards, the Office of Management and Budget, and the requirements as defined. Once the council once the council and the Housing Authority adopts the cost allocation plan, it will be incorporated into the city's standard operating procedures, and it will become part of the Housing Division's internal control policies. This will then satisfy and address the audit findings from both HUD and from the independent auditor and in the findings report as it relates to the compliance with the cost allocation plan.
Okay, that's my question. That's my issue right there. This is something that should have been done years ago, right? This is not something that just materialized. This is something we should have been doing for some time, right?
There has been a cost allocation plan, but in looking at it and reviewing it, it did not meet the standards. And so therefore, when we allocated
but why
costs...
did it not meet the standards?
There are certain criteria that Office of Management and Budget...
they were the same standards. Nothing really changed. They didn't institute anything new, so...
It's the method of how it was derived, and because we did not have the ability to substantiate the method and the rate, we had to update the plan. Otherwise, what was happening was any costs that we were allocating were being disallowed. So by putting forward an approved, updated cost allocation plan that meets OMB standards, now we'll be able to allocate those costs. They should not be disallowed, and it will provide additional relief to our general fund.
Okay, this is this department. This is our housing department, correct?
This in particular is housing because HUD is asking for this, and this is the finding that they would like to address. In addition, you will find in the audit report that the cost allocation plan is a finding there as well.
Okay. This is my point. Is this the same department that failed to submit a grant application timely, and we were not able to secure those monies, Mr. Fields? Was it 5 million? Or was it 1 million? How much was that?
This is not addressing...
Well, I know it's not addressing, but is it the same department?
As Sharon mentioned, this cost allocation plan will not just address the housing, it'll address...
Correct. It's
the entire city.
This OMB cost allocation plan will address any program or federal funding that the city's
all right, let me ask
receive.
my question. Okay, Ms. Quickie, you're doing fine. Ms. Fields, you're doing great. Just answer my question, if you would. We had a situation where our housing department, they did not submit a grant timely, correct? How much money was lost as a result of that?
I'm not sure of what housing grant you're speaking of.
Okay. Yeah. I got the exact terminology. Here's my point. I just wish to know, why is it that we have individuals in these departments and this is something that should have existed prior, and yet we continue to move forward, and we keep almost as if we shoot ourselves. Well, I don't want to say that because all of our employees are wonderful. But my point is that our problem once again seems to be management. When we have something such as this, and this has not been instituted. HUD hasn't enacted any new rules or regs. This is just something that, well, you could pretty much say someone interpreted the rules wrong. Or, well, that's not the proper word. Someone misinterpreted the rules. Let's say it that way. Is that correct, Ms.
I don't
Coyke?
think it's a misinterpretation of rules at this point. What we're trying to
Well,
do
we're
is
having to do it over.
what
We're
trying
having to
do
modify
is,
it.
yeah, what we're trying to do is clean up the management issues that you're talking about. This has been a cost allocation plan that has needed to be revised for quite some time. Now that Sharon and I are on board, we're getting it updated and moving forward. And as she mentioned earlier, it'll result in some savings to the general fund because we'll be able to transfer or allocate more costs to restricted funding sources.
Mr. Fields,
Councilors.
this management issue existed before you. I'm not pointing fingers at you. I'm just saying, as I mentioned before, you know, in this civil service, I come from private sector. You have a person here in the municipal government. They have what's called bumping rights. You say, well, we're not happy with your performance, so they are then allowed to move back to their original position. And this is just an example to me of why I was proposing that maybe management should be contracted, just management, not our regular employees, because then you don't get into the bumping issue. You follow me? Person doesn't perform, you simply say, thank you very much. It's time for us to separate. We part companies. Everyone smiles.
Ms. Quakey, did you have anything else you wanted to
I did want to clarify. The cost allocation plan actually existed in the past, but the cost allocation plan needs to be reviewed and updated on a regular basis. There was a cost allocation plan that the city had, and it was in place. It just needs to be updated on a regular basis. It's
Councilman,
all right.
I got you. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Yeah, I happen to have comments. Actually, it's not quite as simple as that. Yes, we did have a cost allocation plan, but the reason we're taking this action this evening, and actually it's kind of appropriate that it came after the discussion of our financial condition, because we had our auditor here who talked about findings, and findings are not good things. Findings are, layperson's terms, faults, problems that have to be fixed. Actually, with regard to the cost allocation plan, that's a finding of an audit done by HUD. HUD came in here, they did a full management review, and they found faults with many of our issues. And a finding is not just one mistake, it's usually a series or a program. It's numerous. So if we did not review and put forth a new cost allocation plan, fix what was broken, HUD wouldn't give us any money anymore.
That's correct.
And we get how many millions of dollars from HUD on an annual basis? Roughly? Just a rough guess is fine.
Tens of millions.
How many?
Hundreds of millions.
Yes, hundreds of millions. We would risk losing all the money from the feds, from HUD, if we don't fix these problems. These are problems that they found. We didn't find them, unfortunately. We didn't find them, but they found them. So we're doing this evening, which is a good thing. We're like fixing a problem, something that's been broken. But once again, it's appropriate that it came on this with the audit, because they used the same terminology. It was a finding when the HUD did their management audit. We were doing things wrong, and they said, you know what, you better fix this along with some other things, or we're going to stop giving you these hundreds of millions of dollars to your city. So it's critical that we take the action to fix it, but the public needs to understand why it's before us. It's not just we decided to take a look at it and review it and update it. It's actually a requirement, or we risk losing a whole lot of money. And I want to respond to a question of my colleague. He was mentioning a $5 million grant that was lost. I'm going to clarify it for you, Councilman, if I may. Our housing department, over a number of years, I'm going to say, prior to the, I have to qualify this, prior to the people who are there now, because that would be unfair to include people who are there now, today, what I want to say, misappropriated, misspent $5 million of HUD money, meaning it wasn't going to the programs it was supposed to go to, or the people it was supposed to go to, a whole combination. It's a big list. What was wrong with that $5 million? So the city had to backfill it. You wonder why your streets aren't paved and your sidewalks are broken, and you know, you drive into Hawthorne, it looks like Beverly Hills compared to us. It's because we've had so many problems. We've had to spend general fund money backfilling programs, paying money back to HUD. $5 million of our general fund money, much of it could have been used for our sidewalk repairs, streets, the potholes, all the things that you and your neighbors are upset about, didn't get spent on you. It was pulled out of the general fund to backfill and housing, because $5 million of HUD money wasn't spent like it was supposed to be spent. That's the nicest thing I can say about it. But you know what? HUD has allowances for that. All right, if you have problems and you use your general fund money to backfill a program, we know you need that money for your constituent services, for taking care of potholes, paving streets, putting in new sidewalks. So we have allowances where you can fill out certain documentation and you can ask the federal government to reimburse you. We'll reimburse you that $5 million, and we ask you to fix your programs. Fix them so it doesn't happen again. But guess what? Nobody in the city of Inglewood asked for the reimbursement. Nobody asked for it. And guess what? The feds, as the state, they have timelines. We missed the deadline. And they gave us a long time to request that $5 million back. We didn't ask for it. So we lost it. I should say you lost it, because it was your money from the general fund, your streets that have the potholes that aren't fixed, $5 million gone. And then the Fed said, well, we know you owe housing, we know you owe the city $5 million, but you didn't ask for it to be reimbursed. You have to write off that debt. You have to write it off. And if you don't write it off, we'll stop giving you the money, just like this. It's a finding. It's a bad debt now. We're not paying it back for you. Your residents in your community are out of luck. Too bad for you. Missed the deadline. That's what it was. It wasn't a grant that we lost. It was a loan the general fund made to housing that we never asked to be reimbursed from HUD, so we lost the money. The debt had to be written off, and it was your money that's gone, and I'm sorry about that. But you need to keep informed, and I appreciate all of you out there this evening learning about these issues about your city, and I appreciate all of those who are watching this meeting at home. Because when you keep tabs on your government and ask for accountability, then you will see change and you will see a difference. Thank you.
Councilman Franklin?
Mayor, I'm prepared to vote.
All right, just one comment. It's probably more helpful when things are able to be remediated that things are brought to people's attention. I guess this happened some years ago. If I'd been here and I knew it, then I would have talked to somebody, but that's probably the most helpful thing to do. Madam City Clerk?
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Dunlap.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye. We're called to order the City of Inglewood as a successor agency. Madam City Clerk?
Quorum is present.
CSA 3.
Approval of the minutes held June 19th, 26th, and 29th.
Move approval.
Second.
Madam City Clerk?
Agency members. Stevens.
Aye.
Dunlap.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Chairman Buds.
Aye. CSA 4.
Monthly Treasurer's Report for the month ending April 30th, 2012.
Receive and file CSA 5.
Inglewood Redevelopment Agency, 2010-2011 Basic Financial Statement.
Receive and file. Adjourn the City of Inglewood as a successor agency. Call to order the Inglewood Housing Authority. Madam City Clerk?
A quorum is present. Approval of the minutes held June 19th, 26th, and 29th.
Move approval.
Second.
Madam City Clerk?
Agency members Stevens.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Chairman Butts.
Aye. H3.
Monthly Treasurer's Report for the month ending April 30th, 2012.
Receive and file H4.
Inglewood Housing Authority fiscal year 2010-2011 Basic Financial Statement.
Receive and file H5 is done. Adjourn Inglewood
We've
Housing
done that
Authority.
already.
Authority convening with Public Financing Authority.
Approval of the minutes held June 26 and 29.
Move approval. Second.
Madam City Clerk.
Agency members: Stevens.
Aye.
Dunlap.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Chairman Butts.
Aye. F2.
Monthly Treasurer's Report for the month ending April 30th, 2012.
Receive and file. CM1.
No verbal reports, Mayor.
Quorum is
A1.
present for the City Council.
What's that, ma'am?
She was calling quorum.
Oh, okay. A1.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. There was a closed session held as to CS1, closed session personnel exemption under Government Code Section 54957, selection of Public Works Director. Discussions were held, however, no final action was taken. CS2 was pulled. There was a closed session held as to CS3, closed session, confidential attorney-client privilege, conference with labor negotiators under Government Code Section 54957.6a, employee organizations were Service Employees International, Inglewood Management Employees Organization, Inglewood Executive Organization, Inglewood Police Officers Association, Inglewood Police Management Association, Inglewood Police Civilian Management Association. Array, conduct of negotiations regarding salaries and benefits. Negotiators for the city: Artie Field, City Manager Jack Huffman, Chief Negotiator, Human Resources and Labor Relations Consultant. Discussions were held, however, no final action was taken. There was a closed session held as to CS4, closed session, confidential, attorney-client privilege, potential litigation under Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection C, Time Warner Cable. Discussions were held, however, no final action was taken. There was a closed session held as to CS5 and CSA1, closed session, confidential, attorney-client privilege, potential litigation under Government Code Section 54956.9A, City of Inglewood and Inglewood Redevelopment Agency versus INHS. Discussions were held, however, no final action was taken. And that concludes the reports out of closed session for this evening. And I have no other comments this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
And
CC1.
I have no verbal reports. Thank you.
Thank you. CT1.
Monthly Treasurer's Report for the month ending April 30th, 2012.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break for 10 minutes. We'll be back at 10:02. They have to change the DVD. Okay. All right.
To receive and file, we stopped and you didn't receive and file on the monthly treasurer's report for the month ending April 30th, 2012.
Receive and file.
Thank you.
Madam City Treasurer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to report to the council and those attending, as well as those might view it on TV. I did make a bond purchase on Friday, even though the city was closed. I still get calls from brokers, and I purchased for the city of General Electric. It's 1.375, and also it's an amount of $1 million, and it is a 5-year, non-call for 1 year. It's an excellent bond. And also a federal fund credit at 0.97. Unfortunately, agencies are very, very low. 0.97, $1 million, purchased from D.A. Davidson, and they're both rated AA. And also would like to report my treasurer's report. There is, for the city of Inglewood, $88,779 on hand, and the interest that has been generated is $58,469. And for the successor agency, $108,834,181, and the interest generated $25,386. Housing Authority, $100,048, interest $46. Public Finance Authority, $2,533,388. And the total funds generated is the total funds on hand rather of the portfolio is $200,258,396. And also for the public attendant, there are reports on the table for you to follow along with me, and it has a great deal of details with the graphic presentations of the investment portfolio also. And for the bonds, securities with agencies, we have with the Federal Home Loan Bond, there's $17 million. And with the Federal Fund Credit, there's $25 million. And with Fannie Mae, there's $4 million. And Freddie Mac, there is $4 million. And as I mentioned again, Fannie and Freddie is not going anywhere. I think once the election is over, they will deal with those two agencies in terms of what they're going to do with them. They own basically about 51% of all mortgages. So that's why the federal government will deal with them. They will not fail. We have also the number of bank failures been 456 thus far. This year there has been 39, and the total assets of these failed banks was $691 billion. Loss to the FDIC is $84.6 billion. And I'd like to point out also that of the bailout banks, roughly all of them have paid the money back, with the exception of the smaller banks, 324 of them, and to the tune of $11 billion still out there. And would like to report also that the bills that was paid for the month of July, $12.3 million, and the net payroll is $2.5 million, the gross payroll $3.5. Total for the month, $14.7 million. Again, interest rates are still quite low. It's for the 1 through 5 year, the rate is at 0.35 to 1%, and the 1% is at the 5-year bond. So in essence, in order to pick up just 1%, you got to go out 5 years, and generally you get very, very little call protection, anywhere from 3 months to a year of call protection. So interest rates continue to be quite low. And I also like to point out, I didn't mention it last week, but for those that are having difficulties with regards to their home mortgages, whether they're delinquent or whether or not they want to get a modification, there was a firm that did have an excellent seminar last week in Long Beach. But you can still call them and get some help with regards to home modification. And also they are HUD-approved counselors, and there's no fee, and that's the good thing about it, because they're not really supposed to be charging monies for these home modifications. And let me give you their number. Their phone number is 562-414-4477. Again, that number is 562-414-4477. And their website is hppcares.org. And again, they're located at 4120 Atlantic Boulevard in Long Beach. And again, there's no cost. They seem to have had a pretty good record of helping folks who are having difficulties with their mortgage, whether or not they're delinquent, or whether or not they're trying to get a home modification, and other kinds of problems. So I would certainly check them out. That concludes my report and my remarks.
Thank you. And we received and filed the report. Any person wishing to address City Council on any matter connected with city business not elsewhere just considered may do so at this time.
Good evening again, Council, staff. Leroy Fisher, the First District. You know, I have some concerns about the resident that was killed on Osage on this past Monday. The gentleman was in a wheelchair. I understand that there might have been some graffiti going on there, and he followed them up, and I guess he was shot dead in a wheelchair. As I was over there today, I see that the graffiti is still on the buildings over there, and I was wondering if maybe somebody would get over there and see if they couldn't get that graffiti off of those buildings over there. You know, you them talked about this budget and where we're at. I'm saying to you again, you know, like I've been saying to you, that you ought to cut your own salaries, you know, and you know, that's some $500,000, you know. Many of you up there don't even need those monies, you know. And it seems to me that you would be doing the residents of this city a favor if you did so, you know. I was wondering, too, that with regard to a finance person, public works director, and a police chief, which hadn't been mentioned at all, why, you know, the police chief hasn't been added to those individuals that there should be search for. And, you know, as you have these closed session meetings, I just wonder if you have even an agency that is out there searching for these people that you can bring on to this city to finally maybe try to get this city moving in some positive manner. So is there a search going on, and why have you not also included the police chief in that search? Those are the questions I would like to have you them answer. Thank you.
My name is Alfonso Parker Jr. I'm a Vietnam veteran, 66, 67. Before I go into that issue, I was wondering if I could mention this real quick. I see where the mayor signed onto a Centralized Intelligent Partnership, CIP, to combat the underground economy in Inglewood. I don't know if you've done this already, but I was wondering if maybe City Hall downstairs could maybe have that on file, or have it on file where citizens would like a copy of it to read the total document to see what it is. Be kind of nice. I mentioned a while back that last month, excuse me, one of my teeth come loose. We lost over 10 million computers the first of the month. You don't know it, but we did, because they were government computers, like they set fires in '73. Also, the Center for Disease, as of around the 7th of this month, came under the United States Army. As you know, Privacy Act, which Bush put into effect, you can't get your own information unless you got a lawyer. They do stories on all kind of things, nonprofits. We have some good nonprofits and some bad ones, especially the military ones. You've done stories on everybody. I'm a Vietnam conscious objector. Some of my comrades on the wall, conscious objector means they were sending us into Vietnam without weapons training because of our belief.
Sir, you're going to have to address the council.
Because of our belief. You've done stories on everybody else. Do a story on me, national TV. I can show you 2 or 3 DD-214s. Only one is real. Somebody come do the story. This is black history, American history. like Tuskegee, this is no joke. And it needs to be out there because it's our history especially, and then especially American history.
Second Lieutenant Tweedle, I'm going to give some, it's not bad news, it's good news. 3 days ago, and I graduated from Dwight D. Eisenhower High School in Blue Island, Eisenhower, the Commander-in-Chief 44th had to pick up the phone and order the USS Eisenhower to the Gulf and the USS Lincoln. So I had to say that. So we're doing good. We're doing good. Okay. Have a nice night, y'all.
Thank you, sir.
Name is Keith Richmond. I'm never recorded. I'm a business owner. I've been a business owner in Inglewood since 1998, and I have a barber shop. And one of my customers came in 2 weeks ago and showed me a document showing me that my shop is being considered in conjunction for gang members. They have meetings at my shop, and all I want to say, my doors is open for anybody to come in. I don't discriminate. And it's not the gang meetings or anything at my shop. So I haven't received the documents, but I read it, and it has Manchester 6th Ave, and that's where my shop is. But, you know, they haven't sent anything to me showing that I'm in, you know, my shop is there, but I read it through somebody else's documents, so.
Sir, if you were going to be enjoined in relation to a gang injunction, you would have to be served personally. And not only that, there'd be a court hearing that would consider any evidence that would be considered against that establishment. And I really doubt that, as a proprietor, that you are being sought to be enjoined in a gang injunction. And you would have, it would be for gang members.
Okay, because it shows.
You haven't been served with anything, sir?
No, sir.
You have nothing to worry about right now.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right.
Everyone, at the time, thank you for hearing me. At the time when our state was begun, there were about 120,000 people. Now there are 37 million. The same amount of representation we had throughout the state when 120,000 people were there is the same amount we have right now. Well, as you look at states, small states like New Hampshire, where they have over 3,000 people in the state level, like our assembly members and Senate, that type of thing. And so the California Women's Think Tank is working to see if we can get more persons involved from a standpoint of bringing in more representation so that we will have people closer to us to be able to go to when there are problems. And so we want to be certain that when you see anything with the California Women's Think Tank, well, then you'll look at that. And also our organization, Cultural Literacy Intelligence Foundation, Federation, SOAR, Seeking Other Alternative Resources, and the Reverend Ruth Summers Burgess Payne Ministries, a few of us are working together on some health initiatives, one of them being the Bow Festival and 5K Run Walk, having some coming back, even from the London group. They're saying they're going to get back, not do the closing ceremonies for our activities that are coming up in August on the at the Civic Center, if you will, or the Caroline Coleman Stadium. So we just look forward to everyone participating as fully as you can. And it's August 10th, 11th, and 12th. And if anyone else would like to comment about that, we certainly appreciate that. And thank you for hearing me. God bless everyone.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Philip Bowers. I'm an owner of BSI Sport Turf Management. And about back in January, did some work over at Darby Park. We renovated the Little League field. And at this point, we're still having a problem getting paid. And I had come to the board back then, and the head of Park and Recs took me out, and I thought I can get it, settled then, and it didn't happen. So however many months it's been since then, I'm back again trying to get some help with that.
You were hired by the Little League?
Yes.
Okay. You know that's a separate entity from the city.
Yeah, I do, and I tried to, deal with it without bringing it here, but I couldn't.
Okay, so who are you dealing with in the Little League?
Danny Tabor and Derek Brown.
How much money do you think you're owed?
At this point, without some of my other subcontractors, I haven't gotten their numbers, but it's close to $15,000 to $20,000.
Okay, why don't you do this? All we can do is take
your information, relay that you've communicated this to us, and we'll make sure that the Little League Board is informed of what we know of. Would you give the Sergeant-at-Arms there just your name and phone number and your address?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm also affiliated with BSI, and just for your information, council people and mayor, that city equipment and city employees were used on part of this project. Just FYI. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Joseph Texera. My councilman is Mike Stevens. I want to tell the council that last week the city attorney sent me another CD containing another 911 recording of the night IPD refused to investigate a drive-by on my street. But IPD and or the city are still violating the law by withholding the other public records I requested about a year ago, like 911 calls where my neighbors reported the shooting, and the recording where one IPD officer tells another that IPD doesn't ask residents to collect evidence for them, even though that's what IPD did with me. Also, IPD and or the city attorney's office appear to be illegally withholding all the written reports by the IPD officers that IPD says came out and investigated that drive-by. Chief Seabrook said there was a report on the shooting, so where is it? And Detective Hollis told me that he had been investigating my fraud complaint for about 4 months and that he talked to the suspect's attorney. If there aren't any reports on all that, it just confirms my complaint that IPD doesn't properly document its investigations. Next, I want to oppose an idea of another resident last week that the mayor be the only one to pick the new police chief. First of all, this is not a monarchy or a dictatorship. It's a representative democracy. Now, I strongly agree with the resident that the color of someone's skin shouldn't be a criteria for the job of police chief. But if this city wants to pick a police chief that is honest and will follow the law, the mayor is not the appropriate person to make that decision. The mayor's been aware of violations of state law for months, and he's demonstrated at these meetings that he isn't trying very hard to find out why those violations occurred. And the mayor and IPD administrators have sat in this chamber on TV numerous times and repeatedly given blatantly false information to the public covering up apparent police and city misconduct. Also, the resident said that his opinion that the mayor is qualified to make the choice of police chief alone was partly based on Santa Monica's supposedly its crime rate going down 64% while the mayor was police chief. But during that same time, violent crime in the United States went down 32%. Violent crime in California went down 45%, and violent crime in Inglewood went down, depending on what cutoff year you use, 2004, 2005, between 61% and 76%. Crime's been going down everywhere for decades, and not because of James Butts. In fact, crime in Inglewood started going down after the mayor left IPD. Also, as Santa Monica's police chief, James Butts was the lead defendant, yes, defendant, in the famous civil rights case, California Attorneys for Criminal Justice versus Butts, which became Butts versus McNally. Court documents indicate that James Butts' Santa Monica PD may have trained their officers to violate the rights of individuals, and the defendants, including the mayor, lost the case, lost the appeal, and the Supreme Court refused to hear another appeal. The last thing people in Inglewood need is someone picking their police chief who, according to court documents, helps train people to violate people's rights. And I want to remind everybody that they can have the petition signed to have the mayor removed as a county council chairperson by going to www.change.org, type in James Butts' name, and sign the petition.
Time's up, Mr. Texera. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, professional staff, residents of Inglewood, I'm here to bring you good news. My name is Wayne Spence. I'm a businessman here in Inglewood. Our 50th anniversary for Jamaica's independence is at hand. This week, Sunday, at Holy Faith Episcopalian Church, right here at the corner of Florence and Locust in our great city of Inglewood, I'm extending a personal invitation to our heads of the city to please come on down, enjoy the music, enjoy the food, enjoy the ambiance. And the same invitation is extended to all the residents of the city of Inglewood. Now, on the same day, a project being sponsored by the Inglewood Rotary Club is happening in Compton Airport. This is great for the kids. It's put on by EAA, which is the Experimental Aircraft Association. These are people who build home-built aircraft. What they're doing is actually teaching the kids how to fly, how to build the remote-controlled, radio-controlled airplanes, how to build the old planes when we were young, and we had to fly them by cords. And then they're actually going to have hands-on projects where they can actually flight simulators. They may be going to the hangars and see some of the dope and fabric type aircraft with the wing spars. It's just going to be a great event overall. And this will be at Compton Airport from 8 a.m. on Sunday, the 5th, same as my ongoing independent services. But it's 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. in the afternoon. It's become an annual affair where Rotary actually sponsors the event. And this year, as a co-sponsor, Spencer for Hire Security over there will provide the professional security services. And my staff will be there to make sure everybody in Inglewood is safe, including the participants here. Just want to thank you all. Thank you for the information on finance. Everybody have a great week.
Thank you.
My name's Diane Sembrano, and as you go to Holy Faith Episcopal Church, keep in mind it was built in 1916 by Grace and her husband, Mr. Howman. Grace Freeman, the daughter of Daniel Freeman. It is the greatest expression of Gothic architecture west of the Mississippi, designed by the same individual who designed National Cathedral in D.C. Isn't history exciting? And when you know what you got, you tend to take care of it. Guess that didn't happen to so many other things in this community. Good thing it's in the hands of a church, huh? Well, you know, I gotta tell you, having been an auditor and an accountant for many moons, 27 findings does not relate to 27 separate individual one and only one things. That we don't know how many automobiles we have and hasn't checked that isn't that we don't know how many automobiles. It's referring to the 500 automobiles which may or may not be in our possession because didn't do the check. So it could be 400 that are missing. The bottom line is we don't know. That's one finding. You see, when we find out that no one knows exactly how it is we got to, what is it? I loved that great comment here. Under further review of documents, it's noticed that in one portion of the MOU stated that an employee was only able to accrue a maximum of 160 hours of vacation time, whereas another section of the very same MOU states that an employee can trade in 800 hours of accrued vacation for post-employment benefits. The difference between 160 hours and 800 hours is a whole lot of hours. And those whole lot of hours multiplied by more than one employee, because when you do an audit, you do a sampling. You might check 5 or 6 employee records, but we have close to 1,000 employees. So it could actually be inaccurate for 99% of them. And all of those benefits that accrue until point in time, get used to determine someone's pension that we pay for till then, what? 20, 40, 50, 20, 60, however long those persons live? When you don't know about accounting and you don't know about findings, it can all look dazzling. And guess what? I don't care how many million we get from signing a bond, if the rest of the money flows through our fingers like water, really doesn't matter. If we got a truckload of millions raining in from this roof, it'd be gone lickety-split. And oh, my time is up. But guess what? Time's always so much more important than how you spend the dollars in this room.
We have 645 employees, and employee sick leave and vacation is not computed in their pension, so it ends when they end. Just an FYI. It's always good to have accurate information.
Cell phone, someone? Oh, okay, I'll bring it. Good evening, Mayor and City Council and staff. Ray Davis, 2nd District. I just want to comment on a few things tonight. I'm also, as I'm sure most people are concerned about our city's fiscal health and how It came out this evening that we're going to have issues with our post-employment benefits, and
Not going to. We've had them for quite some time. They're just being revealed.
I stand corrected. We've
quite
had it,
some time.
And the only thing I could add to it is you can't beat a dead horse. Is we've got to come back to reality. I freely state that if the shoes were on my feet, yeah, I'd accept the pension package of the gods. Sure, I would. We all would. But when reality gets in the way, now what? I mean, like I said, I was born and raised in a little city called Vallejo. That's what took it down. It's happening all over the country. We were living a fairy tale, it seems, these last 15 years, where we're always going to have 7-8% growth, no matter what. Like, what were we thinking? But enough of that. The other thing I want to touch on is I read an article in the Inglewood today about a fellow who represents us up in Sacramento, Mike Davis, and he says that we should inject investment capital into small businesses. That sounds interesting. Maybe he could come down here and give a talk and let us know more about it, because bottom line is, people, that's what it's going to take. We got to figure out innovative and interesting new ways to get income into our city. I've given thought to, said, what would you do, Ray? Maybe we can have this gentleman, Assemblyman Mike Davis, come down. In my last 45 seconds, one thing we don't need is protests that took place at the Burlington Coat Factory. I'm sorry, I just don't support the logic of people who says that we have to create a living wage to support a family of 4. No, we don't. We need to formulate common sense and personal responsibility. If the best you can do is an $8 an hour job, what were you having kids and getting married for in the first place? In this country, this is another problem. We need to stop supporting stupid, because that's what it is. What, we're going to pay the kid on the fryer at McDonald's $20 an hour? When do we come to our senses, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you very much for your time, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Ms. Austin?
Jesus. Hello, happy birthday, Mayor Butts.
It's tomorrow.
Tomorrow is his birthday.
Yeah, I thought you really didn't have to do that.
Yes, I did. You know you love it. And our President Obama is the 4th. Now, I would sing, but you might take my minutes. He could tell you I could sing, you know. You know I can sing.
I know you can sing.
Oh, you want me to sing to you? You gonna take my minutes?
Ethel, it's not necessary.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
See, you messed up, Ethel. Now I'm gonna run again.
I had to get you. Nobody knew. Now back to business. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Ethel.
Okay, on this protest thing, guys, on band, I wanted to let you know, yeah, they're stupid people, because bands are the person that's supporting Mitt Romney, the Republican. So guys in Inglewood, let's boycott Burlington's, let's boycott Michael's, let's boycott Outback Steakhouse, Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah, they the ones supporting Zimmerman too. Yeah, so yeah, that's a good protest, and they don't want to pay but $8 an hour. It's not. They will be closed. And I have
Mr. Davis.
I have a complaint, and I need you, the council, to listen at this real good, and the mayor. We have a police force here. We had 2 murders here. Ladies, this lady here, the U.S. Marshal went and got her husband on the 18th. Then Sunday we had that other guy, the Latino, he was murdered, bless his heart. Now, we have officers here, and I know we have better things to do than to do petty stuff. The sheriff's, LAPD, I mean, everyone is just laughing at Inglewood PD. And this is real, Mayor. They saying that we too petty. We out here looking for stupid stuff, and they looking for drugs, guns, and gangbangers and killers. And I think we should, Mayor, you should stop, Council. You all should put the police to use, not for junk, petty stuff. You know, like this barbershop guy, he live in your district. I mean, by the Mayor Dawn. This man ain't doing nothing wrong. It's petty stuff that they're doing, and they need to stop. You know. Also, I want to say, Mike Stevens. I ain't got but 9 little old seconds here, but let me tell you something, brother. You take too much time. You taking more time than the mayor. You know that? We love you, but you got to work with your co-workers. Mayor, don't let him keep getting 10 minutes every time his time is up. It's time for you to chill out, Mike. You're getting too big for your little panties.
Wow, what a difference a week makes. Okay, okay. Oh, one thing, Ethel, about that gang injunction, actually that's not petty stuff. We have quietly been doing a lot of work, spent a lot of time researching the most violent and criminal-prone gang members in our city, and they're being served now, and that's why we haven't talked about it. With notice of an injunction, they have to go to a hearing, and they'll have to prove why they should not be enjoined from certain activities, including associating, having cell phones in certain areas, anything related to narcotics and criminal gang activity. So what that gentleman was talking about was his patrons being served, and that is not petty. It just deals with the most violent. It deals with the most violent gang members in our city.
On 6th Avenue.
That's where they found some of the people they served. So that's what he was concerned about. Okay, nothing petty. All right, we'll close public comment. Councilman Stevens, any closing comments?
Yes, I have closing comment. In reference to Bow Health and Arts Festival 5K Run and Walk, that will be taking place on the 10th, 11th, and 12th, August 10th, 11th, and 12th, over at the Carolyn Coleman Field at 400 South Inglewood Avenue in Inglewood, California. That's the old Sentinel Field, and that'll be taking place there. Also, in reference to Market Street, City Manager, thank you very much for cleaning that up, and Devon's doing an outstanding job there, as well as also Mr. Frisbee. He's been exceptional, and thank you for taking care of that drive-through bank teller access facility dating back to the days of First Interstate. That was an eyesore, and we've really cleaned that up. Let's see, what else? Oh, the I-Line shuttle. My daughters rode the I-Line shuttle today, and boy, did they enjoy it. And they rode it, and I want to say we have an outstanding staff and a great driver. And they boarded the shuttle over at what's that street? Right at Hillcrest and Spruce, right at the pharmacy. And they traveled down, and it took its turn, and I was talking to them on the phone. That's how I know that they enjoyed it so much, because they were saying, "Daddy, we're going down Hawthorne. Now we're turning on Injury." All right, and they go down past the Sentinel Hospital, and they really enjoyed it. They were with their mother. And, we have all these great little nuances in this community that makes our community special, and that happens to be one of them. Let's see. Graffiti, I also was at the Osage facility where the gentleman was shot in a wheelchair. There's more to it than just that, but the graffiti, I did not observe any graffiti on any of the buildings there, but perhaps it just recently was placed there. Mr. Mayor, council members, I would like for us, since we are allocating the funding to the sportsmen's Sportsmen's Little League, and thus far they have, in fact, received, my best recollection, of $125,000. Perhaps we could discuss this issue in executive session in reference to the validity of the statements that were made at the podium. I'm sure there's two sides to every story, but if we could research that and schedule that for an executive session on the executive session agenda, could that be possible, Mr. Fields?
I'm not sure if that's a closed session item. I have to defer to the city attorney.
It wouldn't involve litigation against us. There's only certain things we can go to closed session about.
I grant that, but they mentioned that city employees were working at the site, and I do also remember city employees and city vehicles being at that site during that construction project. So we'll discuss that offline. We can discuss that offline. Let's see. Well, time is up. Okay. Yes, it is. Well, anyway, I'd just like to say, Mr. Spencer, I want to just say this publicly. I apologize that I was not able to secure the stage for you at Centinela Park. I know you do not hold it against me, but unfortunately, our local government, we're just not able to do some of the things that maybe in the past may have been done. But I support your event, and I just like everyone to know that the event is taking place once again in Holy Faith Episcopal Church. That's right behind the shopping center where Didi's is, sandwiched between Hillcrest. It's an outstanding event. It's Jamaican Day Independence. And Mr. Wayne Spencer, I support what you're doing. It's just unfortunate I wasn't able to help you with that stage in Centinela Park, and I apologize.
Councilwoman Dunlap.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I know that will be a wonderful event, especially Mr. Wayne Spencer. I'm sure you're going to sing for us, right? Always, of course. Two numbers, okay. Yes, I just want to say, express my concerns with regard to, once again, the financial report, the structural deficit, which this council wants to fill with $2.5 million of the one-time money from the trash, when it's potentially $5 million or possibly even more. So what are we going to do? Wait till the night of the meeting, figure out what to do, and be mindful. I never suggested all of a sudden tonight we take action and lay somebody off. I said we've had a whole year to look at this. This didn't just happen overnight, this continued structural deficit. So I think we should not attempt to mischaracterize other people's views. I think everyone should put forth their view and their opinion to the public and allow the public to judge without us passing judgment on each other's comments. So I'm still concerned about the structural deficit ongoing and violating our financial policies, which says no one-time money to be used. With regard to the questions I posed regarding our cable access channel, under state law, DIVCA, I said we don't receive any PEG money because we don't have any program that qualifies, and I stated that the requirement from the state is to have 56 hours of original programming. We would need our own head-in to do that. We don't have our own head-in. We've never invested to receive the benefits, which is the revenue. We have never had 56 hours of original programming. And apparently we have staff who thinks that if you have a bulletin board, that's original programming. It's not. And if you show the same meeting 4 times, it's not. It only counts the one hour or whatever it's on. It doesn't. Plus, we actually took official action up here. I think it was a 3-2 vote to completely eliminate public programming and education programming. We eliminated it approximately 6 months ago. And it's right here. I requested the copy. Thank you, Mr. Fields, for getting it to me. It's now only government, just the G of the PEG. No public, no education, just the G. So there's no way we qualify. And once again, it was mentioned here, well, maybe we'll look into it. Well, you know, you look into it. I am telling you, since we don't qualify, if they've been paying it, you're going to have to return it. It's going to have to be returned because we don't qualify. So once again, we eliminated programming, and I have a lot of constituents who are upset about that, by the way, because then they couldn't do their little local programming. I want to end, Mayor, by speaking. I read an article in the Los Angeles Business Journal. Need about an extra 20 seconds, if I may.
Yes.
About the city of El Segundo, our neighbor to the west.
El Segundo sees creative ways to lure business. They want to challenge Silicon Valley for tech and media firms to come to their city. And you know how they're going to do it? My gosh, something I've been asking for what, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years. This year, I'm going to repeat it again. And I'm going to read the article here, then I'll speak on it very quickly. Competitive.
It's going to take more than 20
The city
seconds.
needs to increase its fiber optic connections. They're going to put a fiber optic cable. Remember when I said let's use our redevelopment money to install fiber optic cable to every home, business, and school in the city? It would increase our home values. It would increase businesses coming to this city to bring jobs because they'd want to be here with fiber optic cable to increase that type of broadband. And we haven't done it. And you know what? We wouldn't have had to increase your water and sewer rates because when you install cable underground and that tunneling, you can also put in the new sewers and the water system. That would have been free to you as a community as opposed to having to have your water and sewer increase to pay. We could have had it done for free under redevelopment. I'm still going to look to see if we have set that money aside. I know I tried to put it in our master plan, so we will see what we can do in the future. El Segundo is doing it. Other cities are doing it, progressive cities. We've had an opportunity. We failed in the past. Let's hope we are successful in the future. Thank you.
Councilman Franklin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to raise one item. There has been a recent broadcast of the City Council meeting that addressed the issue of concern regarding a internal memorandum that was circulated within the police department that identified that the direction of the acting chief to change his stationary to the position of chief, and that is now, I'm now getting phone calls as well as when I'm out in the district visiting with residents, raising the issue about is he the chief or is he not? And I had to explain to them that this council is the appointing authority that makes the decision of who is in what capacity as department head, and that we gave him the authority to be the acting chief, not the chief of police, regardless of the stationery or the emails and other correspondences going out with the title as chief. I want to get that clarified real quick, and that this council needs to consider taking action about curing and correcting this, because past appointments by this council, those individuals maintained their status, including stationary, and said they were the acting. And I'll go back as far back in the days when Jerry Givens and Jeff Muir were the assistant city managers. They were the acting city managers or acting city administrators back in those days when we had the vacancies. When our current city attorney came on board, he came as a acting city attorney because of the vacancy. Then ultimately he filled the position. And then finally, close to home, I want to identify that Julius Davis was our acting chief of police, and his stationery said acting chief of police. And in direct result to the resident that raised the issue about is there a process? Yes, this council gave direction there's a process, and I don't want to taint this process by people being misrepresented or misinformed that this council said that he is the acting chief, and this council has gave direction to the city manager that there will be a request for proposals and that it will be used in an executive search firm, so that way we can in fact have a pool of candidates that will be weighed in consideration. And it is a multi-month process, not an arbitrary decision made by this council, but a due process system in which this council will be able to make a quality decision whether it's going to be internally that we ultimately decide this person will be in a permanent position, or maybe some other individual out in no man's land that may respond to the notification. But I do want this community to know that this council has in fact made a decision that we will do our due diligence with an executive search to fill this position. Thank you, Mayor. Good night.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Mike.